Hello. Hello, friends. What is up? How's it going? Just switched back to this tab and there was Rob. Scared the shit out of me, to be honest. I'll do that to people. I will do that to people. It is spooky season after all. Very true. Very true. What do we got? 2 months, 3 days, 12 hours, 18 minutes, 15 seconds until Avatar 2, The Way of Water, hits the theaters. That's exciting. I'm very excited for that. Sorry, this is a weird cup. My Star Wars, drinking out of my Star Wars mug. Again, we don't need to mention the shirt. I just got a text from my partner as soon as I started, because she got me this shirt and said, "I see you're wearing the shirt." She also said to tell you all that she appreciated the birthday wishes. She told me to tell you that. I don't know if she's familiar with the Dan ban though. There is a Dan, of course, there is a Dan ban on the channel. Everyone knows this. I would like to go elaborate more about this shirt and the band that it's referencing, but of course that's not allowed. That's not allowed. I'm not allowed to talk about that anymore, so... It is what it is. It is what it is. Looks like Avatar 2 will be my Christmas Day movie after a piping hot bowl of ramen and a stroll. That sounds lovely. That sounds absolutely lovely. Honestly, Avatar, great Christmas movie. Great Christmas movie. I'm trying to start a holiday tradition. I'm not just saying that. I've literally did that the last 2 years to watch Avatar. It's a wonderful Christmas movie. It's got a story. It's a story of rebirth. It's a story of personal growth. It's a story about moving beyond greed. Transcending these like kind of innately human qualities of greed and destruction and colonialism. It's about transcending these values, and that's what Christmas is all about, folks. Christmas is about moving towards greed, though. Well, that's what it's become because of capitalism, hasn't it? That's what it's become, but it doesn't need to be like that. Rewatched Avatar recently. It looks better than any movie released since then. It seriously does. And I still didn't even go see the new one in the theater where the effects have been remastered. It still just looks fantastic, though. It looks so much better than whatever. I remember when I was watching the new Doctor Strange movie, and there were some enjoyable things in that new Doctor Strange movie, but I was watching it, and I was just like, this looks like a TV show from 15 years ago. It looks like a sci-fi channel TV show, like a made-for-TV movie. And Avatar just it just looks so much better than fucking everything. In terms of effects-driven, sci-fi movies or whatever, the Marvel films or what have you. I'm sorry, but I'm still thinking about this ban. So you talked about the ban, but promised not to do it again. That's right. That's right. So now when you do want to go back, Jack, and do it again, and talk about the 70s jazz rock band that the shirt is referencing, you can do so in the Dan Pilled channel in the Discord server. That's where the discussion about certain bands takes place. It doesn't happen on this program. It happens in the Dan Pilled channel on the Discord server. I was just talking about that band this morning. Okay, well, I'm happy to hear that. Emily rides a skateboard. I'm happy to hear that. Obviously, as you know, and I am a fan of that band. Unfortunately, I just don't talk about that specific band on this program. I think I went through a little bit of a phase where I was doing that a little too often. It was a little alienating. I think at one time there was a big raid that came in, and I immediately was just like, I immediately threatened people that didn't like Steely Dan. I immediately threatened them, and I was like, get out if you don't like this band. And it became a big problem. Any major dude with half a heart would talk about the band. Well, I mean, that's true. Yeah, that is true. It's dirty work, but somebody needs to do it. That is correct. That's absolutely correct. And sometimes when I go for a nice walk, I just put on my bad sneakers and just take a little walk, listen to some tunes. You know, that's the best time to do it. Are those Joy Division waves? Yeah, it's a shirt that's designed to like make people angry. It's like a shirt that's designed to make like post-punk fans angry, which is kind of why I enjoy it. And I like Joy Division. Don't get me wrong. I like Joy Division, but it's just a funny shirt for fans of like, it's because that era of music recording was so contrary to what other bands really pioneered. I used to leave the stream during Dan Talk. It was too much. That is exactly why the Dan ban was implemented. Dakadu, and there will be no more discussion. Dan fans are the most oppressed group of people I've ever seen in my lifetime. No comment. Hey Hassan, what's up? Trying to be a regular again. Well, happy to have you, Hassan. Glad to have you in the chat again. How's it going? Has the UK totally collapsed yet? At least it's not a Hall & Oates ban. I can't go for that. No. Hall & Oates also a very classic group. Big fan. Enjoying my coffee. I joined a Hall & Oates Discord for the emotes. I could get some Hall & Oates emotes. Some Hall & emotes. Did they call them that? Is that what they call them? Hall and emotes? Huh? Hall emotes. I guess that's even better. Did we do the dragon talk already? No, Mondo Michel, I kind of missed that yesterday because I was kind of rushing through the chit chat section because I had to answer all my critics yesterday. Okay, it's apparently a no spoiler zone though. That's going to be tricky. All I will say about the most recent dragon episode is that when a certain someone made that dramatic return and said, "I will sit the throne today," and gave that long walk through the hall, my fist was I was fist pumping. That was one of the moments that matched pretty much any moment from the original Game of Thrones series to me. I fucking loved it. Wonderful. Tremendous. Brandon, that's right. That was Brandon in like the Situation Room. Many a fuck yeah was heard in the Russo home. That's correct. Yeah. I got kind of addicted to these. I keep munching on these like they're nothing. I can't get enough. Have you covered the UK shit show? I mean, not really. we've been talking about Labour Party stuff lately. We've been watching that Al Jazeera series about the Labour Party scam, the whole fake anti-Semitism scandal, smear campaign. We've been watching that. So we've been talking about the Labour Party. That's been good. We haven't really talked about like Liz Truss and like the kind of ongoing collapse of the UK, that we haven't gotten into that as much. With all their budget, why can't HBO just make a series of all Shakespeare plays? That would be great. Yeah, that would be kind of cool. Yeah. It does look a little... I mean, I was very skeptical about Sir Keith. But the sad thing is the Conservatives are just so inept, and they've overseen such a disastrous policy and this disastrous decline over the last decade that it seems like Sir Keith might actually just weasel his way into the prime ministership. As unlikely as that seemed maybe a couple of weeks ago. Is there a minimum time she has to be PM? I don't know, because it seems like they already want her gone. That's the amazing thing. It's been truly an incredible couple of weeks from what I've been paying attention. It was like she was there for 5 minutes. And they're like, okay, this is enough now. They've already had enough. She's giving Liz Truss, but they don't want a Liz Trust. Huh? Her double PhD finance minister immediately tanked the economy more. Just all the more evidence that we need that the study of economics is not legitimate. I mean, we already knew this here on this stream, obviously, but you're hearing it more and more. That the study of economics is just not a legitimate discipline whatsoever. Completely fake. Complete bullshit. We made it up. It's a total fabrication. The fact that they're trying to go back to supply side economics, which is totally discredited, means they have no plan. Yeah. Oh man, those sour icebreakers, very good. Blair 2.0, here we go. Yeah, that's the sad thing, though, is that, like, yeah, there's a chance that Labor might actually form the next government, and it's going to be some fucking watered-down neoliberal bullshit. You know? Maybe slightly better than what the Conservatives are offering, but the whole big transformative agenda that was on the table a couple years ago is going to be, like, totally fucking watered down. It's funny, his old hedge fund boss shorted the pound before the policy announcement. I wouldn't expect anything less. It's also amazing, too, just like the whole thing about the Corbyn years where, like, we're moving past austerity. Austerity's over. And that was Corbyn had a big part of that influence, saying we're not doing austerity anymore. You know, we're moving past that. And then because it was so unpopular, the Tories were like, and us too, or we're not doing austerity either. And then they get to this point, Boris is gone and Liz Truss comes in. They're like, no, actually, we are going to do that again. We're going to go back to that, actually. How about that? What a cursed place. Just a cursed country. Britain. What I saw the thing about Charles' like coronation. May 6th. Here's the question. Here's the question that I have for you. In 1 second. Here's the question. Coronation on 6th May for King Charles and Camilla, Queen Consort. Is this decrepit, like this, talk about decrepit kings that are just falling apart at the seams. Is this guy going to last this long? This man does not look well. He does not look healthy. Have you seen this man's hands? This man has giant, deformed, like lobster hands. That's not the sign of a healthy individual. Can this man last the winter? That's the question. That's the question that I'm putting to you right now. He'll definitely die before he gets on any Canadian money. We can only... Actually, I hope that we do a whole printing. We do a whole King Charles printing, and then he dies. And then it becomes like a collector's item. It becomes a collector's item like those sports team shirts that they make for championship sports teams. And when they don't win, it gets sent off elsewhere, and you see people like around the world wearing them. You made it like it. This is the peak male form. God. May 6th. I don't know if he's going to last that long. I really don't know. Hey Squatch, what's up? Gosh, I felt so bad. I was in Squatch Drew's. We have a fantasy basketball league that I was there in last year, which I fucked up the draft for last year. Squatch Drew has been very patiently reminding me for weeks. The draft is coming up, Rob. And I'm like, no, I know it is. The 2 nights ago, Squatch Drew in my DMs, here's the thing for the draft. Here's exactly when it is. It's coming up. Now I know. I'll be there. Literally yesterday on this stream, Squatch Drew comes in. Talks in the draft. I'm like, yeah, the draft is there. I know it's happening tonight. It's happening tonight. Looking forward to it. At 7:30 p.m., I'm thinking to myself, 1 hour from now is the draft. 1 hour from now is the draft. And then 8:30 rolls around, and the thought is just gone from my mind. And I was watching The Simpsons with my son. And just nothing. It's not like I was like, oh, I have to do the draft, but I can't. Literally just no recollection of it whatsoever. No recollection of it whatsoever. Just completely gone from my mind. So many, literally a reminder the day before, the day of, literally 1 hour before. 7:30 p.m. I'm thinking to myself, draft in 1 hour. Draft in 1 hour. And then the 1 hour rolls by and it's gone. Absolutely gone. Which episode of The Simpsons? Well, okay, so I've been getting my son into The Simpsons, which is kind of an encouraging development because it's like Halloween and we were watching spooky stuff. So I put on some Treehouse of Horror episodes. I put on the Treehouse of Horror episode where Homer sells his soul. Your team is actually pretty good. Okay, well, that's good to know. That's good to know. I'm going to try and pick up some guys off the waivers and try to put a personal spin on it. But that's good to know. But yeah, I've been showing him the Treehouse of Horror episodes. Yeah, and yeah, the donut one. When he sells his soul. And that fucking great joke when it's just like, have all the donuts in the world. And he's just going, hum, hum, and just eating all the donuts. And then it cuts to later and all the donuts are almost gone. He's all fat and his little legs are kicking happily. And he's just munching on all the donuts. It's so great. And then it's got an all-time great, more, yeah. It's got an all-time great Lionel Hutz joke in that as well. What is a contract? Webster's defines it as an agreement under the law which is unbreakable. Which is unbreakable. Excuse me, I must use the restroom. She opens the door and there's just the windows open, the breeze blowing in the window. Fuck, that's just so great. I don't understand. James Coca went mad in 15 minutes. I don't even understand that reference, but it's still very funny. What a great episode. So I've been showing him that, and he's really into those, and he really liked the Treehouse of Horror episode when Homer goes in like 3D. He goes into like the computer simulation. It's kind of like a Poltergeist parody. And he goes into and he loves that. He keeps watching that over and over when Homer falls down into like the black hole and goes crap, 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 and all just like disappears and stuff. He just keeps watching that over and over and over again. But then, since he was getting into The Simpsons, erotic cakes. That's right. Yeah. Yeah, Iman loves that one too. Great. Yeah, it's really good. James Coco was a fat actor from the 60s and 70s. Okay, I was not aware of that. So because he was into that though, and it was it's not a Trios of Horror episode, but it's still kind of spooky. Was I put on my absolute favorite Simpsons episode ever, the Cape Fear episode with Sideshow Bob. I put him on that. And he really he liked it way more than I was anticipating, which is good, because that's just my favorite episode of The Simpsons. There's so many funny jokes in it, but the thing that he's obsessed with and he can't stop watching, like he literally just watches this part over and over and over, is when they're on the houseboat and Homer comes in with a knife and says, "Hey, Bart, you want some brownies before I go to bed?" And he looks all scary, and Bart goes, "Ah!" And he loves it. He keeps watching it over and over and over again. He keeps watching, and then, "Hey, Bart, you want to see my new chainsaw and hockey mask?" So he was really into that. Yeah, hello, Mr. Thompson. That's so great. When I say hello, Mr. Thompson, and step on your foot, you smile and nod. Hello, Mr. Thompson. I think he's talking to you. Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Kids love grinding a bit to pieces if they love it. I'm trying to explain that to him as well, because then it becomes annoying. I'm like, it's very funny, but it becomes less funny when you watch it over and over and over again. But that doesn't seem to bother him too much. I'm glad at least one kid is being raised on good TV. Well, that's the thing. It's like not everything that he likes I think is great, but it's like if I can introduce a few of those things, then I feel pretty good. I don't know if any of his friends are watching that stuff. It becomes less funny, then it becomes funny again. That is kind of true. Yeah, that's true. I made them watch Dental Plan. Lisa needs braces last week, and they loved it. Well, then so last night, and this is what I was doing instead of the fantasy draft. This is what got me talking about this. But last night we watched the one from season 1 where Sideshow Bob gets arrested in the first place, because now he wanted the backstory to why Sideshow Bob was in prison in the first place and wanted to kill Bart. So we watched that one last night. So he's getting pretty into it. Like he really likes this. He's getting really into The Simpsons now. Yeah, the Sideshow Bob backstory. That's right. The Bart. No one who speaks German could be an evil man. Like that. I was just marveling at, like, when you go through those seasons, like on Disney Plus, it's got every episode of The Simpsons, and you just go through those seasons. I think that one season, the Cape Fear episode, I think is season 5, and just every episode, they did not miss. They literally didn't miss for like 8 straight seasons. Every single episode is just banger after banger after banger. It's fucking amazing. It's truly like a remarkable achievement. Those episodes are so densely packed with jokes. That's what I mean. It's like it's just like that episode is one example, but like all those episodes, really, it's just it's so densely packed. You're right. Visual gags and just like every moment, every scene has a fucking classic bit or a classic gag or joke. Oh my God, I can't believe I missed Simpsons Discourse because my stupid family was on Skype.
Use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
Can you not wait for you to introduce him to the show creator? Yeah, I think I'll maybe avoid that. I'll maybe avoid that one. My take is Simpsons falls off around 12 or 13, but there are still good episodes and moments through 20. That's the weirdest thing as such a huge Simpsons fan, that there's literally like 15 years worth of Simpsons episodes that I have not seen one. I have not seen one episode. There's a whole world of Simpsons episodes that I have not ever looked at or paid attention to whatsoever. It's really bizarre. I can count on one... Jesus, Outrun. You never cease to amaze me with these comments. I can count on one hand... By the way, thank you, Dimitri, for the 100 friend coin. I can count on one hand how many Simpsons episodes I've watched. Would you suggest starting at season 1? There's some great... It's one of those... Like any show, it takes some time to like get rolling. But there's some really good episodes in season 1 as well. And 2. It really starts hitting its stride around 3, 4, 5. And then it's basically it's never misses until about almost 10, season 10. It's wild how many great jokes are packed in every episode. Sometimes I'll rewatch a random episode and be shocked how many memorable bits are packed in a single show. It's just amazing. It's astounding. I don't think any show has ever matched that level of like quality. Any comedy show. Homer as astronaut is probably my favorite. Hail Lance. I, for one, welcome our new alien ant overlords. I'd like to remind them, as my status as a TV newsman, I'll be helpful in rounding up humans to toil in their underground sugar caves. That wasn't totally word for word what it is, but that's a great joke, though. That's a great joke. It's really amazing though, and I'm really it's been very cool over the last couple of days to be watching those with my son, because it's like I really like that he's kind of getting into those. And he was figuring it out too, like in the episode last night that we were watching with Krusty and Sideshow Bob. He was like, I think Sideshow Bob disguised himself as Krusty, and I was like, maybe that is what happened. I mean, he did start with the knowledge that Sideshow Bob is in jail in the future, so maybe he has a little leg up there, but you know what I mean. Chin chin, by the way, everyone. I got a cherry bubbly here. Is South Park still good? I don't know. I don't know if it's still good. I haven't watched South Park for a long time. Is the stream now sponsored by Bubbly? I think it probably is. I mean, let's be clear. I've got completely shut out. Rain has been totally radio silent. Rain has been as much as I hyped up this product. I made drinking Rain energy drinks a major part of my personal brand for literally years. As much as I've hyped up this product, they're now totally radio silent. Maybe I should get sponsored by Bubbly. Hey, what's up, old Dutch? My grandpa would let me stay up to watch with him. He's still watching and he make me want to start over. I haven't watched a lot of those older episodes for a long time either, so it's been cool to be able to do that over the last couple of days. That one, someone referenced the really good joke before too. Oh, okay, Mr. Burns, and what is your first name? I don't know. Have you seen all the steamed ham variations? No, that's getting into like next level Simpsons memery. We got to start off with the basics first. Was it Seth MacFarlane who stated that The Simpsons was unrelatable due to the disappearance of the middle class? I mean, it's not like there's a lot of like small towns with a nuclear power plant where you can get a good union job. Or, I mean, I don't know if I can't remember if the union drive was successful. I guess there's a capitalism problem as well. But get a good job at the old nuclear power plant. decent sized house, enough space for all the kids. Just need to get that Buy It Quoke sponsorship. That would be the true golden egg. Rob gave himself a caffeine addiction and heart palpitations for rain, and this is how they treat us, like a dog. Drinking from a puddle in the night, exactly. Rob's the biggest Chris Jericho fan with a little bit of the bubbly content. I am a big Chris Jericho fan, Starlight. That is true. Not the GOAT to me, even though definitely Chris Jericho is one of my all-time favorite wrestlers. The GOAT, obviously, for me, Bret the Hitman Hart. That's not going to be changing anytime soon. The best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be. But a big Jericho fan as well. Big Jericho fan as well. Did you follow the CM Punk fallout? Yes, I did. I loved that CM Punk. After All In? I loved that CM Punk promo when he's eating the muffins and stuff. God, I fucking loved that. People like online were so mad at CM Punk and saying all kinds of things about him. I fucking loved every moment of it. I thought it was wonderful. I thought it was great. I was team CM Punk on that. Listen, he comes into AEW. He's being a big draw in AEW, getting all kinds of eyeballs on this product. And you have these fucking weird indie guys starting this whisper campaign about him, about how he got this guy fired, trying to turn people against him. Yeah, I would understand that he was mad. He should have been mad. I loved that promo after that with eating the muffins. God, that was great. He's all covered in blood and everything. Chris Jericho's gimmick when he was reeling off his list of 1,000 holds while the crowd booing and throwing garbage at him was peak. That was WCW Jericho was fucking tremendous. And I like how he's been kind of returning to that lately. I just want Kenny Omega back. Well, I agree with that, Starlight. I think Kenny Omega was kind of an unfortunate collateral damage from that Punk promo. But I loved the promo, though. I really did. What films have I seen? I haven't really seen any recent films. Like I was saying yesterday, I've been watching like Halloween films with my kid, and I watched Ghostbusters 2 on Friday. I watched Beetlejuice on Saturday, and I watched Monster Squad on Sunday. But he is an Englishman, he remains an Englishman. I will send you to heaven before I send you to hell. Big fan of Monster Squad. Although some very unfortunate anti-gay slurs in the first 15 minutes of that movie. That's very 80s, very of its time. Other than that, though, it's pretty great. You'd think in the post-Stranger Things world that would be ripe for a remake, Monster Squad. No, I didn't see Northman or Everything Everywhere all at once. And I did not see Top Gun Maverick. I'm very bad at keeping up with like newer films coming out. The next good CM Punk program will be his first. Outrun. You're Outrun. You know I love you. Okay. You know I love you. I think you're a wrestling contrarian, Outrun. I'm sorry to say. Please don't. I did see Prey. Prey was very good. I enjoyed that a lot. Although, as I said a couple months ago, when it came out, I ended up watching Predator 2 after, and I really appreciated Predator 2 even more. But Prey was good, though. It was a totally worthy entry in the Predator franchise. It's one of my favorite franchises. CM Punk is a fraud. He should be getting handshakes and hot dogs for the rest of his days. Baron Corbin, best heel work in the business right now. Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ, Marty. Watched Predators the other day, and it was pretty fun. The cast of that movie is unreal. Yeah, that one was pretty good as well. It's a worthy entry as well. I didn't see the Shane Black one, though. I didn't. That's the only one I have not seen. I wanted to get excited for the Shane Black Predator movie, but then I ended up it seemed like kind of there was getting some weird reviews and some weird shit about it, so I just didn't end up watching it. Jinder Mahal top heel heat in the last 3 years. I did enjoy the Jinder Mahal world champion run. No, John, I'm not an Alien vs. Predator fan. Did not enjoy Alien vs. Predator. I thought that was it tarnished both of those franchises, unfortunately. And yes, I am going to see the new Avatar, Hassan. Absolutely. That's opening weekend for me. Definitely. When you have the available time, please see The Platform on Netflix. Saw it at TIFF and loved it. Watch in Spanish because the English dub is atrocious. I'll keep that one in mind, Dimitri. I'm not up on new. I've been mostly watching like TV. I've been into House of the Dragon. We've been watching Rings of Power. I got caught up on. I'm not totally caught up, but I'm almost through Better Call Saul. I had kind of fallen off that and got back watching that. I did, yeah. I would like to see Top Gun Maverick, Hassan. I love the original Top Gun, even though it is like shameless imperialist propaganda. I'm sure I would like it. I love Tom Cruise and I love Top Gun, and I think if you recognize that it's harmful Western imperialist propaganda and try and understand how it's harmful, you can still enjoy it. But I still haven't seen it though. The Canadian Destroyer against Keith Lee was sick. I mean, that's always kind of cool. You know, here's a contrarian wrestling take for you here, though. Too many Canadian Destroyers now. There's way too many. I feel like I see a Canadian Destroyer once per whatever show, in one AEW show, and like I just see it all the time. It's too much. Too many Canadian Destroyers. Cancel all Canadian Destroyers until we figure this shit out. You know what? There's only one Canadian Destroyer that I think should be allowed on live TV. This guy. It's the only Canadian Destroyer that you need, I think. Oh, okay, Cornette. Canadian Destroyer, Rob, you mean Scruff? What was that guy? There's some guy that was so mad yesterday. Some guy that was so mad, but then was like one of those guys that was like confidently mad, that was like trying to pretend that it was other people that were mad and not him. What was that guy's name? Like Blippo Blappo or something? Something like that? Something along those lines? He was like, Rob's pissing his pants over this bridge being blown up. And it was like, is that what's happening? Is that what I'm doing? I don't think it is. Classic Blippo Blappo. What does Canada even have a navy for? I don't know. For just in case the U.S. ever needs to like tell us to do something, we can say, "Oh yes, sir. Oh yes, sir, America." I think it was Blippo Blorpo. Okay, I see. Yeah, something like that. Missed opportunity to yes and that accusation. The destroyer of geese, correct. Let's not. We're gonna summon Miragons here. Flippo Nafo. Here's something that I actually did. I don't know if Blippo Blappo is in the chat. I think he's banned. I saw he submitted like an unban request. Here's what I would say. If there's anyone that's like watching maybe to like hate watch or just say like, oh, I hate this guy. When's he going to talk about how much he loves Russia or whatever? Here's what I would say to anyone, whether it's Blippo Blappo or like anyone that's watching this right now. Here's what I would say to them. I would say, let's look at this tweet. You know how we can convince Vladimir Putin to withdraw from Ukraine? Give the Ukrainians the weapons they need to win. I would say, do you agree with this stance? Blippo, if you're watching, is this what you agree with when it comes to Russia and Ukraine? This is the stance. Who's this? Who's this guy? Who's that guy? You agree with that guy? You're on the left, and you're like, we must stand with this man, Mike Pompeo, former CIA director, former Secretary of State. This guy. This is apparently who, if you don't follow this exact line, you're like you love genocide, you love Russia, you love Putin or whatever. The real leftists stand unequivocally with Mike Pompeo on this one. I still don't know what NAFO stands for. Please don't look into it. Just don't look into it. Do not look into it. Nothing will ever top that guy coming in to say he was your high school best friend, fat pussy. That was an all-time great moment, wasn't it? That really was. And it was true, too. It's 100% true. "100% true." Love sock, globe, Ukraine, EU emojis being experts of fascism. Don't forget the rose emojis as well. The rose emojis as well. They're all experts on this one. Including our friend Blippo Blappo. My wife showed me a TikTok of a person comparing Elon Musk to Ford because Ford had a portrait of Hitler behind his desk and Musk allegedly has a portrait of Putin behind his desk. Porpo Dorpo. I think that was it, actually, Squatch. I think you're right. I think that's what it was. Well, that's our childish understanding of geopolitics, right? Everyone we don't like is Hitler. Everyone we don't like is Hitler, except the actual fascists who love Hitler. They're not Hitler. The ones that have pictures of Bandera on the wall, you know, Bandera who helped carry out the Holocaust and everything, and was so fucking brutal and violent in the Holocaust that even the Nazis were like, whoa, man, like, hey. They're not Hitler, but everyone else is, though, right? That's where our discourse is at. That's where our discourse is at. We can do a bit of a segment on this, I guess. I think I said my piece on my Russia and Ukraine take yesterday.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
But there are a couple things that I wanted to take a look at as well. They went so past the far right of fascism that they're left. That's right. They're the ultimate believers in horseshoe theory. Thank you, Dimitri. You see the same discourse in the QAnon shit. Save the children. Okay, here's some actual pedos. No, not those ones. Here's some children that are being molested by DHS border cops in fucking these concentration camps that they're putting them into. They're like, no, not those ones. Not those ones. Gruffo Huffpo. But our friend Nora has been being targeted by these people as well. Right? But she's pointing this out, right? Everyone is hit. This is Canadian like geopolitical opinion journalism. The war has gone on long enough. It's time to negotiate with Mr. Hitler. Oh, you're so clever. You're so fucking clever. This is Canadian journalism here. It's fucking embarrassing. Canada sending another $15.2 million in equipment from the Canadian Armed Forces to Ukraine, including 150 millimeter NATO standard artillery rounds, fuses, and charge bags comparable with M777 howitzer artillery guns. That's what Canada's up to. Nora really tweets a lot. This was such a cursed thread. This is Nora's take that got after the NAFO hordes were after me the other day. This take from Nora enraged all the same people. They enraged all the same people. What do Ukrainians want from the international community? More weapons, more long-range weapons, air defense system, and long-range weapons. Yeah, that's a recipe to end war. That's Nora's... Again, we talked about my controversial take yesterday that got all these fucking thousands of weird losers after me. And the weird losers were after Nora for this completely benign, fucking uncontroversial stance. That's a good way to end the war, is by escalating the war, right? That's what we went on, we talked about a lot yesterday. Let's just keep escalating the war and just more arms transfers and more escalation and no negotiation. That's how we're going to end this thing. And then this fucking guy, Bruce Arthur, the sports journalist who now has become some kind of like geopolitical expert. Bruce Arthur, who in the my title's all messed up. In the run up to the Olympics in China was just like completely fucking deranged. He's this like amateur China watcher, and apparently he's a Russia-Ukraine geopolitical expert as well. Bruce Arthur. He's so fucking annoying. Oh, it gets worse. It gets worse, according to Max Fawcett. She says, I'm stuck at the idea that fighting this is going to do anything positive.
To talk you through all this.
There are non-aggressive ways to deal with this. Negotiations are key. But the question is this, are borders more important than lives? That's the only calculus worth making here. Oh my God. You can't say that. How dare you say that? Nora the tanky. Nora Loretto the tanky. The classic tanky position of like, we should not be arming and bombing this country. We should not be encouraging this conflict to continue even more and escalating it even more. We should try negotiating. That's the classic tanky position, right? And the sensible, centrist, nuanced, liberal position is, let's just fucking escalate this thing till it becomes a nuclear holocaust. That's like the sensible liberal position. And the tanky position is like, maybe we should negotiate, there should be some kind of negotiation or a ceasefire so the war stops. So people stop dying rather than more people dying. That's the tanky position. And I love how these guys have it's no analysis, right? It's just pointing out these reasonable stances that Nora's promoting and saying like, and just not even saying anything about it, but it's just so outside, it's so like out of bounds that you don't even need to say anything about it. Because when our sensible liberal friends look at this, they know that it's just completely beyond the pale to even ever suggest this. Oh, it gets worse. And with a totally sensible opinion. This fucking Bruce Arthur, the tanky view of this war has been so discouraging. This motherfucker is so annoying. So annoying. And thank you, Metal Dipshit. Thank you for gifting a sub 1 minute ago to Tampon Taste Tester. All wars end in negotiations. Let's just cut to the chase. No. No negotiation. Bruce Arthur says no. Bruce Arthur says no negotiation, no surrender. From his home in fucking like Ottawa, where does he live? Ottawa, Toronto? No negotiation. That's tanky. That's tanky to negotiate. Never negotiate. Only constant conflict. Thank you, Super. Gosh, it's so fucking annoying. And then there it is. Look. The Hitler comparisons again. The homeowner in York Mills says knock it off. No, continue turning this country into a fucking war zone. Even more. I demand for my home in fucking Toronto or wherever, for this thing to never end. Just escalate this into a fucking full scale, turn the entire country into a blood-soaked war zone. I demand it. And where's that great... Bruce has another fucking great quote here. Let me see if I can find it. Bruce. Where's this quote? Let me find this. Of course, retweeting some anti-Chomsky stuff. Yeah. Of course. Where's the quote? Where is it, Bruce? I know. Yeah, here we go. Folks, there's Liberalism 101. Liberalism 101. Liberalism.jpg. Here's Bruce's stance on this. I, too, am anti-war. But... Bruce, come on. You're not anti-war. No. When you're criticizing someone for saying maybe there should be less arms transfers and more negotiations, and you're criticizing them and literally being like it's repulsive. That's like a repulsive thing to believe, for there to be negotiations in this war to stop this war. And then no, you can't describe yourself as anti-war. You're pro-war. You're literally pro-war. And he can't even type properly. Sometimes they're just another solution to a problem. There's just no other solution. I'll turn the entire country into a goddamn war zone. We'll show them our peaceful ways by force. That pretty much says it all, doesn't it? I too am anti-war, but when it's against the Ruskies, that's the big difference. Big difference. What will stop Russia giving them what they want after war criming? Well, Bonap, it's like, I think not escalating things to that point would have been probably my preference. As we know, there's been this conflict going on for the last 10 years that America and Canada and NATO have been pouring gasoline on these flames for the last 10 years until things get to this point. quite deliberately. So yeah, I think some kind of negotiation, some kind of settlement or ceasefire is the way to stop the war. Here's the thing that no one wants to admit, Bonap. There's no situation where Ukraine can like win militarily, can push Russia out of their borders, can get them to leave Crimea. It's just not happening. It will not happen. So there's going to have to be some kind of negotiation or settlement or ceasefire. And I think, I did this podcast episode with on the insurgents a few months, like right after this started. Let me actually just call it up here. That I would encourage people to listen to. It was with Kelsey Atherton, I believe. Kelsey Atherton. Is that his name? I'm sorry, I'm kind of messing up. Just one moment here. Oh man. Well, this is embarrassing. This is embarrassing. I'm going to find it in just one moment here. Spencer Ackerman. Jesus Christ. Spencer Ackerman. I would encourage people to listen to this episode. Because in this episode, we were very clear about, the invasion and how horrible it was, and not trying to give credit to Putin for anything like that, while also talking about the very real reasons that were animating Putin and animating Russia to engage in this conflict. And Spencer, why did I say Kelsey Ackerman? What the fuck is that? Who is that? I think one of the smartest things he said, and he was very, very clear about denouncing Putin and Russia and not giving them, while explaining what happened, not pretending that it was like justified or not pretending that it was wonderful. But something that he said that has stuck with me since that time, which is that people have to divorce in their minds the idea of like defeating Russia, ending the war and defeating Russia. These are like mutually exclusive things. And there's going to have to be a way to end this thing where Putin and Russia feel like they've gained something and it hasn't been a complete waste, which is, I think, a pretty reasonable sentiment. And he did denounce Putin. He did. We said Putin bad a number of times in this episode. We said Putin bad a number of times. And I think that remains true today. The people have to get rid of the idea and they're divorced from in their minds this idea that you can defeat Russia and end the war. There's no that's not going to happen. You can end the war, or you can turn it into a nuclear irradiated wasteland, a constant war zone. And ending the war is going to resolve some kind of settlement or ceasefire that is going to involve, no matter how much people don't like this, is going to involve changing some borders around. And if you live in fucking Toronto or Buffalo or Virginia or Calgary or London or Paris or whatever, and it's really upsetting to you, the borders of eastern Ukraine, and it's so upsetting to you that you're saying, no, that's not, we can never do that. No, we can never do that. Well, it's like, I don't know. First of all, I just don't know why that matters to you. What does it matter to you what the border in eastern Ukraine looks like? There's all kinds of ethnic Russians in that region that would actually be quite happy with that situation. You know, what does it matter to us what the border of eastern Ukraine looks like? I don't think it does matter. You know, I think most people that live in that region where there's been this conflict over the last 10 years would like to no longer live in a war zone. You know, I think I don't want to speak for anyone. I'm sure there's many people that are unhappy about their country getting invaded. I think there's a lot of people that would probably rather just not live in a war zone anymore. So there's just no situation.
Use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
Thank you, Dimitri. I'm absolutely loving this copium of Westerners who will scream Putin and Assad bad all the time, but never open their atrocious holes when America kills everything that moves. Get over it. Well, we hear Dimitri too. Well, two things can be bad, right? America does bad things, and we also have to point out Russia, China bad, and Assad bad as well. But it's like, well, when you live in America, though, and you benefit from America being the global imperialist power, right? And there's no comparison, by the way. When you talk about like, oh, this is it's anti-imperialist to support Ukraine because Russia's doing imperialism. When it comes to global imperialist powers, there is no comparison whatsoever. Zero comparison whatsoever to America's imperialist power versus Russia's. Look at the military bases around the world. Look at global financial dominance. Look at global control over the flow of information, systems of information. There's zero comparison between Russia and the United States in terms of imperialist powers. Zero. It seems like the expectation is that Russia will just give up and pull out and all is good, instead of those Russian failures leading to Putin being deposed and replaced by some extreme hawk who will be worse. Well, that's what I was saying yesterday, Mike, is that all these calls to escalate this war are actually a gift to the Russian far right, the like extreme Russian nationalists who want to escalate this war even more and who view Putin as being like too soft on Ukraine. It's helping them, right? And the longer this goes on, it's only empowering those people who want to get rid of Putin and replace him with someone even much worse. It's empowering those exact people. A simple way of explaining that is just showing the national military spending chart. It is very simple. Yes. When all this started, CNN did man-on-the-street interviews with Ukrainians who correctly stated that it's the U.S. who's instigating this whole thing. I mean, that's the fundamental thing about this conflict. If you think that Ukraine is just this innocent victim, this innocent bystander, and that America is just being the altruistic world police who's stepping in to defend this poor nation that's being attacked, there's some fundamental battle between good and evil, you have to kind of just like forget this idea. That's not what America does. The idea that America is just being the global world police, the superhero defending the poor innocent victim of this conflict, it's just complete nonsense. That's not America. That is not what America does. And you can't have any analysis of this conflict without correctly recognizing, and this doesn't absolve Russia of doing bad things. Russia has done terrible things in this war. I don't think anyone would dispute that. But the idea that this was totally unprovoked, that Canada and the US and NATO played no role in encouraging this to like push things to this exact point, that's just nonsense. You know, that's just like we can't have an analysis of this conflict without understanding this basic reality that Canada and the US and the NATO countries encouraged it, that fanned the flames of this conflict over the last 10 years. It's not like arms transfers to eastern Ukraine just started. They didn't just start in February of this year. They've been going on for a decade now. We've been arming and training and funding these militia groups in eastern Ukraine for the last 10 years. Why have we been doing that? A lot of them openly fascist, openly neo-Nazi. Why have we been doing that? Do you think maybe that when Canada and the US arms and trains these neo-Nazi militias in eastern Ukraine, perhaps that Russia might view that as being a threat to their security? Do you think that's maybe like a normal reaction when NATO is not only expanding directly up to your border, which means parking nukes right on the border of their country? And that's what Ukrainian membership in NATO would mean NATO nuclear weapons directly on their border. And we've been arming and funding these militia groups for 10 years. You don't think that they view that as a threat to their security? It is ongoing for a decade now, just as now it's media news. Thank you, Law Sue. And there's some people that have been doing reporting on this. Our man, is it David Pugliese? Why is this not opening? Are these Ottawa Citizen links just like broken now? Do they just take these down? This is from November 8th, 2021. You'll notice that's before the conflict began.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob.
You'll notice
to,
that's
talk you
before the
through all
conflict
this.
began. Allegations of Canadian troops training neo-Nazis and war criminals sparks military review. A review into how Canada approves the foreign military personnel it trains should be ready by early next year, but parts of the study will need to remain secret. Why is the Canadian government, prior to the conflict breaking out, not afterwards? Not afterwards. I wonder how that review turned out. It's a great question. Why was the Canadian government training neo-Nazis and war criminals in eastern Ukraine? Isn't that kind of weird? Do you think that's maybe something? Do you maybe doing that is perhaps provoking a conflict? Would if America was with another country was training fucking fascist death squads directly on their border, do you think maybe America would view that as being some kind of a provocation, maybe, or a threat to their security that they would have to respond to with military attacks and violence? Do we think? I think so. I think if that was happening on the border of the United States would have fucking nuked the whole area months ago. They would have gone full shock and awe months ago. Why was the Canadian government training neo-Nazis and
use the
war
computer
criminals?
to mark up the size of the account.
GMO Radio, thank you for the gifted sub a few moments ago, and thank you, Dimitri, for the 100 friend coin. What is this Daily Motion clip? That's from 2012. Oh yeah, and I think we've even watched that clip before. The BBC thing about Azov Battalion in 2012. Here's a 5-year-old article in Reuters. Bonap, I don't know if you're still here, but you got to ask these questions. Ukraine's neo-Nazi problem in March 19th, 2018. And these are the people that the Canadian government and the United States government, NATO, the CIA, and whoever else, we've been arming and training these people for the last 10 years. And you can't acknowledge that. Reuters is a tanky rag, exactly. It's a tanky, known anti-imperialist conspiracy theory rag. Reuters. You have to ask yourself, if you really think this is a conflict that just began in February, that this is some imperialist war of conquest on the part of Russia, you have to ask yourself, when we have been arming and training these people for now years, do you think maybe it's possible that we played a role in provoking that? So if we played a role in provoking it, and it's not just some like one-sided war of conquest, perhaps it is just some kind of negotiation that needs to happen to end the conflict. Or do we think more arms transfers and more training of these groups is going to end the conflict? What do we think is going to end it sooner? That's the question. How are you supposed to pronounce that? Is it Reuters? Reuters. Fuck off. As usual, the chat is ignoring my serious, legitimate points that I've been doing to focus on mispronunciations. Bonap, are you still here? Because I've seen you in the chat many times before, Bonap. You remember, I've seen you be part of this community before. I'm trying to answer your question here, without being an asshole about it. But I think it's really important that we recognize this. We have to recognize our role in instigating this. It doesn't absolve Russia of responsibility for doing anything bad, or to pretend that they haven't done everything that they've done has been good, or that Putin or Russia is like an honest actor when it comes to like this whole denazification process. Like, we don't have to We don't have to say that. We don't have to pretend that that's true. But we do have to not put our heads in the sand and pretend that we didn't play a role in provoking this. That is one thing I reject. That is one thing. I rejected that prior to this conflict breaking out. I reject it the day it broke out, and I continue to reject it. The idea that this is some one-sided, unprovoked invasion. That's not what it is. Rejecting any diplomatic means was the West's strategy even before the war. Well, they signed those Minsk agreements. Why weren't they followed through on? Why didn't they had a peace treaty? They had a ceasefire. The Minsk agreements. Why didn't they get followed through on? Why? Was it because of Russia? Was it because of Russia that didn't happen? Or is there this like entrenched element in the Ukrainian military establishment, these far-right Ukrainian nationalists that had no interest in any kind of negotiation or settlement? And were there overlords in NATO and the CIA and the Canadian military establishment? Were they the ones provoking it all along? You now are going to be made out to be the bad person because they're not willing to follow the brainwashing of USA and Canada can't ever do anything wrong. Well, Lasu, fucking tell me about it. My whole weekend, I had people calling me all kinds of crazy shit. They say I like Putin. They say I'm a genocide denier. I support rape as a murder of war, like murder a weapon of war, and all this kind of stuff. For just saying like we shouldn't be doing this. We shouldn't be training neo-Nazis and war criminals. And fucking thank God for David Puglia is one of the only like actual journalists in this entire country. I guess Bone app took off, which is unfortunate because I was trying to answer the question without being a prick about it. But like, you can't look at these articles. This is the point. You can't look at these articles and say like, oh, this is a one-sided, unprovoked invasion. You just can't. I'm sorry. You cannot. You can't. This tweet from Josh was good as well. A good way to spell this out. I really like Josh. Recommend everyone follows him if you're not already. Josh CO301. Which narrative sounds like infantile propaganda here? 1. America is acting altruistically to defend Ukrainian democracy from Putin, who is Hitler reincarnate. This is the vast majority of people that talk about this. This is what they believe. Or number 2, America is using Ukrainians as sacrificial pawns in a proxy war against Russia to maintain unipolar dominance. If you really look at these two things and you think about some of the things that I've said over just the last hour or whatever, or over the last couple of days and weeks, do you really think this is the reality that we're looking at here? That America's just swooping in like a goddamn superhero to defend Ukrainian sovereignty and democracy? Do we really think that that is what is going on here? If you do think that, I would be interested in understanding like why the fuck you think that that's a legitimate phenomenon. Because most people do understand certain things about what America's role in the world and what it is and what America's values are. Damn it, it's 1. You know, it's just childish. Like Josh is saying, infantile. It's childish to believe this, that this is some fundamental conflict between good and evil. That this is just this totally unprovoked invasion, imperialist war of conquest, and the only solution to that is to arm the noble freedom fighters' Ukrainian resistance with more Stinger missiles or whatever it is. Yeah, Putin is the reincarnation of Hitler, yet Hitler is quoted in saying he took all of the things from how USA and Canada did to us indigenous people. We literally laid the blueprint for the Holocaust. We did. Canada and the United States wrote the blueprint on how to commit the Holocaust, and Hitler was like, hey, this is pretty good stuff. And then we sit there and wag our fingers about people and lecture people about it.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
My thoughts on the developing situation. Enjoying Rocket League more than Fortnite right now.
Thank you, Ice Tray, for the 200 friend coin. I did play a good game of Fortnite this morning. Got a top 4 finish. Wasn't able to seal the deal. But I did have a pretty solid showing this morning. I should get back into Rocket League, though. I fucking love Rocket League. What else do I have here? I have a couple more things I wanted to... And I wasn't really even planning on talking about Russia and Ukraine again today, but I would probably like to pivot to video at some point here. Here's our man, though. John Mearsheimer, another guy who has been smeared as being like a Putin supporter just for saying basic facts, just for talking about basic facts about the geopolitics that have led up to this.
To talk you through all this.
Lucid, hey, Lucid Duck.
Just Belmont too. Thanks for the 4 months of tier 1. Thank you. Today is the time to do what we do every day.
Use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
Thank you, Dimitri, for the 100 friend coin. And yeah, tanky John Mearsheimer, along with Nora Loretto, Noam Chomsky, of course, a big tanky. Known tanky and Putler lover. That's correct. Lefty leftoid Putin lover John Mearsheimer. Here he was 7 months ago. He's been criticized so much. And again, Mearsheimer's statements from 2015 helped us understand this so much, because Mearsheimer was talking about how we were provoking this in 2015. He was saying, like, what do we expect is going to happen here? We're going to provoke a fucking war and Russia is going to roll over Ukraine and we're going to be responsible. He was saying this in 2015, and we're still pretending this was some like unjustified, unprovoked invasion, war of conquest. So here's Mearsheimer 7 months ago, again, just saying true things for which he was called a Putin lover and all this shit. And I guess the only, like, if you want to make the comparison between Hitler and Putin, I don't think there's really a comparison in terms of like the foreign policy element right now. But I think the humiliation that the West inflicted on Germany after World War I and destroying their entire economy and destroying people's lives across Germany allowed someone like Hitler to rise in the first place, very similar to how the decades of humiliation that the West inflicted on Russia after the fall of the Soviet Union allowed Putin to rise to the same extent, promising to restore national dignity and national sovereignty and that kind of stuff. I think the parallels end there, but I think there is a strong parallel to how these figures rose to power in the first place, and how the West played a large role in inflicting the conditions on these countries that allowed those people to take over. I think that would be the one comparison that kind of makes sense. I don't think there's much comparison in terms of what Russia is doing in Ukraine right now. You think it's a stretch, Dimitri? Rob, you're mad about the bridge. That's right. You're just mad about the bridge. The West is leading Ukraine down the primrose path, and the end result is that Ukraine is going to get wrecked. That's what this guy was saying in 2015. In 2015, he was saying this. People also like to point out and we're going to watch this in just one moment, but people also like to point out the Iraq analogy, saying, well, I was against the Iraq war, and it's the exact same thing. What Ukraine's doing what Russia's doing in Ukraine right now, it's the exact same thing. It's exactly like Iraq. And like the thing is, it's not like Iraq. If Iraq was directly on America's border and there was a legitimate case that they had weapons of mass destruction, and Ukraine becoming a member of NATO would actually mean NATO nukes in Ukraine, which would actually mean they would have weapons of mass destruction, that would be a closer analogy. But like, if Iraq was directly on the border of the United States and not around the world, and they weren't just making up a bunch of false pretenses to go into it, yeah, that would maybe make sense. But it does not make sense whatsoever, that analogy. Plus, there would have been Americans in Iraq being killed by Saddam. Saddam being armed and funded by a major military power, rival to them, geopolitical rival. It's just like Iraq. You mean that country that the United States also invaded for totally altruistic reasons that had nothing to do with oil? Well, I guess the people that say that are trying to say the invasion of Iraq was wrong by America and the invasion of Ukraine is wrong by Russia. That's the analogy, I guess. But the analogy does not make sense in any way, considering Ukraine is directly on their border and there are these, whether you like it or not, whether you want to admit it or not, legitimate threats to Russian sovereignty and security that were taking place prior to that. Have you seen Marxists acting like a multipolar world is not an upgrade? Yeah, I have seen that. I have seen that. A lot of Maoists pushing back on that. Yeah, and Saddam was only in power because we didn't want Marxists in power. Exactly. Saddam was another guy that we armed and funded and then had to go in and fight later, which is something that I pointed out, on the weekend to make everyone extremely mad. Anyway, here's Mearsheimer 8 months ago.
The Russians are not going to roll over and play dead. In fact, what the Russians are going to do is they're going to crush the Ukrainians. They're going to bring out the big guns. They're going to turn places like Kiev and other cities in Ukraine into rubble. They're going to do Fallujahs. They're going to do Mosuls. They're going to do Grozny's. You know what happened in World War II when the United States was faced with the possibility of having to invade the Japanese home islands in early 1945. The idea of invading the Japanese home islands after what happened at Iwo Jima and then later what happened in Okinawa really spooked us. So you know what we did? We decided to burn Japanese cities to the ground starting on March 10th, 1945. We killed more people the first night we firebombed Tokyo than we killed at either Hiroshima or Nagasaki. And we were systematically burning Japanese cities to the ground. Why? Because we did not want to invade the Japanese main islands. When a great power feels threatened, the Russians are going to pull out all stops in Ukraine to make sure that they win. And then there's the nuclear dimension to this.
Well, so this is true. That's where he got it wrong. Russia's been way more restrained than Maish predicted here. Russia hasn't done that yet, but that's the thing, yet. But we're still only in the fucking escalation phase. We're still just saying, no, we need to escalate. We're still cheering on the pipeline being sabotaged. We're still cheering on, these like bridge explosions, whether it's a suicide bombing or not, killing Russian civilians. We're still escalating. So they might still be pushed to this point yet. They haven't yet, but that doesn't mean they're not going to eventually get there.
The Russians have already put their nuclear weapons on high alert. This is a really significant development because what they were doing was sending us a very powerful signal as to how seriously they take this crisis and what's going on. So again, if we start winning and the Russians start losing, you want to understand that what we're talking about doing here is backing a nuclear-armed great power that sees what's happening as an existential threat into a corner. This is really dangerous. Go back to the Cuban Missile Crisis. I don't think that what happened in the Cuban Missile Crisis was as threatening to us as this situation is to the Russians.
Of course not.
But if you go back and look at how American decision makers thought at the time, they were scared stiff.
What you say, Russia hasn't done that yet. What I hear Russia doesn't feel as threatened as they could feel right now. Well, that's the issue. is that in terms of our sensible liberal journalists, the only understanding that they have about this conflict, the only way that to end it is just by threatening them more and more and more and more, and doing like what Mearsheimer is saying, just completely backing them into a corner. That's why I and others are trying to desperately talk about the need for like negotiations and some kind of ceasefire. Which of course gets framed as being the tanky position. That gets framed as the pro-Putin, pro-Russian position. Yeah, they have a fleet of brand new bombers they barely even use. Like it's just fucking delusional. Like that's what I mean. It's like we think this idea that like Ukraine's gonna win. They're gonna push them out. They're gonna push back the orc hordes. They're gonna take Crimea. Like they haven't even fucking brought out the big guns yet. That is still a possibility. Putin pulled back and doesn't want to be aggressive because he fears NATO and understands the US is just stacking this aggression further. So he's adding on forces and preparing not just for a winter, but for a long haul. Yeah, and I think, I don't want to try and suggest what fucking Putin is thinking, but like, you think the calculus might change for these countries, the NATO countries that are involved in this, when we get to this like energy crisis, this coming energy crisis this winter. And there's going to be a lot of popular sentiment that is going to be saying like, wait, what the fuck's going on here? Why are my energy prices going up so much? Why is my quality of life going down while we're endlessly shipping billions of dollars to Ukraine? And Russia might be counting on this kind of popular sentiment to metastasize and completely like make it impossible for these NATO countries to continue escalating like this. Yeah, the propaganda will meet reality. Yeah, it is going to be ugly. I think that's the meaning behind special military operation, that it's not an all-out war. But again, Leash, even if you say that, if you even use the words special military operation, that is Putin propaganda. Just to even say that. I seriously doubt anyone is pro-horrible war, but the liberal brain rot is basically telling them Russia bad and everything else good. Hell, just look at Finland. They want to limit access for Russian civilians. Yeah, and like we saw the other day, when Russian civilians get incinerated when they're trying to cross a bridge, that's totally A-okay. And that's something we can laugh about and joke around about and post memes about. And that's totally fine.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
Dimitri, thanks for the 100 friend coin. Female Guaido. Right.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Cluely 50 spin a Rob.
Thank you, Moss. Moss, thank you for the 19 months, tier 1. Very kind of you. Thank you very much. Belarus must officially withdraw from war participation. Every Russian soldier must leave Belarus unconditionally. All involved in Russian attack from Belarus must be held accountable. Democratic Belarus and Ukraine should build an alliance against Russian aggression. Who is this lady again? Yeah, of course, the national leader of Belarus. How can I forget? Yeah. How can I forget? Everyone knows Svetlana Sikhnouskaya. Everyone knows this lady, the true leader of Belarus. Very true.
The Russians are not going to do now. So what we did after 2014 is double down, and what we're going to do now and what we're doing now is doubling down.
Girl, why?
What does that mean? We're encouraging the Ukrainians to resist. We're not going to fight for them, you understand? We're going to fight to the last Ukrainian, but we're not going to do any of the fighting. They're on their own in that regard. But we're going to arm them and do what we can to train them at this late date and hope that they can hang in there and duke it out with the Russians. And nobody believes they're going to defeat the Russians, but maybe you'll get a stalemate. Now, the question you have to ask yourself, this is really the key question, is what are the Russians going to do, right? It seems to me that a lot of people in the West think that if the Ukrainians provide enough resistance, the Russians will roll over and play dead. Or maybe Vladimir Putin will throw his hands up, he'll surrender, he'll say, this was all a bad idea, I regret doing it. Or maybe there'll be a coup in Moscow, he'll be overthrown, and they'll bring in leaders who will work out a deal with us, and Ukraine will live happily ever after, we will live happily ever after, and the Russians will be chastened. I've spent my entire adult life studying great power politics. I know a lot about great power politics. This is not the way the world works, and it is certainly not the way the Russians work. You want to understand, going back to what I said about the April 2008 decision, the Russians said at the time, this is an existential threat. This is an existential threat, right? So even before the current war, Ukraine becoming part of NATO was viewed as an existential threat. Now you're talking about a situation where you defeat the Russians in Ukraine. This is a much worse outcome for the Russians than what happened in April 2008, and a much worse outcome than what happened in February 2014. And the Russians are not going to roll over and play dead. In fact, don't the Ukrainians have any agency? I mean, after all, it's their country that's being destroyed. One could make the argument that the West, especially the United States, is willing to fight this war to the last Ukrainian. And
he really
the
keeps
end
hammering
result
that home,
is
doesn't he?
Ukraine is, in effect, being wrecked as a country. Given that they have agency, is it not possible that the Ukrainians themselves will say enough is enough and put an end to this? Sadly, I don't think that's the case. And I think the fact is that the United States will not allow the Ukrainians to cut a deal that the United States finds unacceptable. The Washington Post had a piece on Monday that made it very clear that the administration and our NATO allies are very worried that the Ukrainians are going to cut a deal with the Russians that makes it look like the Russians won, or that in fact concedes that the Russians have won.
They tried voting for peace and got a war. That's right. That's what Zelensky was all about.
That to happen. As I said before, the Biden administration is out to inflict a decisive defeat on Russia. If the Ukrainians decide to cut a deal and allow Russia to win in some meaningful sense, the Americans are going to say that's unacceptable. And the Americans will work with the right-wing nationalists in Ukraine to undermine Zelensky or his successor.
Zero lies detected.
So I see no way Ukraine can step in and put a stop to this crisis. I just see it going on and on.
And I just and so yet no lies detected. But again, we looked at that Mearsheimer clip from 2015 where Mearsheimer correctly predicted everything that was going to happen. Like we were saying before, the West is leading Ukraine down the primrose path, and they're going to get wrecked by Russia. How can this man say this in 2015, and this is still an unprovoked, unjustified invasion that just began in February? How does that make sense? Why was he talking about this in 2015 if this was totally unprovoked and unjustified? That's the question. That's what I don't understand how people don't ask themselves this question. And people literally just call him a Putin sympathizer just for correctly stating that this is what's going to end up happening and being correct about it. It could be the situation for the next 20 years. Seriously, as much as we talk about this, there should be a negotiation. There should be a ceasefire. It's not an option. It's literally not an option on the table, even if that's what Ukrainians did want. Even if Ukraine passed a national referendum right now that said, we want the war to end, we want to negotiate with Putin, we want this to stop, America would say, no, that's not okay. That's not acceptable. This playbook has played out many times before. Yes, it has. And Dakadoon, we pointed out yesterday, when I pointed this out, that this playbook has played out many times before with disastrous consequences. People say the same thing about me that they said about John Mearsheimer. You love Putin. You think the war is great. You think it's cool when Ukrainian civilians die. That's what people are saying to me. It's fucking madness. And again, our sensible liberal journalists like fucking Bruce Arthur, the goddamn sports journalist, are just like, no, we must continue to... I am anti-war, but the anti-war stance is to turn this country into a goddamn fucking blood-drenched battlefield for the next 2 decades. That's the sensible liberal anti-war position. Has anyone asked the hockey columnist how to defuse this tinderbox? Yeah, he's a sports journalist. Yes. And listen, I don't want to, it's not like I'm some trained fucking political science guy or a fucking war expert or anything. I'm just a random dipshit as well. But like, I also like don't pretend that I'm to be anything other than that. And then Mr. Self-important fucking Blue Jays columnist, Bruce Arthur, / geopolitical expert / amateur China watcher. Exactly. John Mearsheimer, the Putler-loving tanky, Eric. That's correct. If you were poli-sci, you'd already volunteered to get shot in Ukraine. That's true, yeah. That is true. If I was a poli-sci expert, I really wouldn't have any of these viewpoints that I do. Has anyone asked Skip Bayless's thoughts on the situation? I would actually be interested to hear that. I am actually interested in hearing Skip Bayless's thoughts on this. Oh boy, Vlad. Oh my goodness, shots fired. To be fair, he was a Leafs columnist, so he does have a fair bit of experience analyzing losing sides. Oh my goodness, Vlad. Oh. Direct hit. Yeah, Skip's going to bring LeBron into it. Exactly. Exactly. I do want to hear Skip Bayless on this. Has he said anything? I haven't seen anything. I haven't seen anything from Skip on this. I genuinely really enjoy Skip Bayless. I genuinely really do. But Rob, with how good this invasion went for Russia, Putin is just going to be emboldened to start all kinds of invasions now where he has to do huge, politically unpopular mass mobilizations of soldiers. That's right. That's right. I'm here to tell you right now, we don't care. I don't know. We got anything left on this? It's been 2 days I've been talking about this. Should we switch to something else? Can we talk about more like dragon bullshit? Do we have to talk about this anymore? I don't know. I wonder what communist Alex Jones would say about this. Folks, we're not talking enough about NATO expansion. NATO's been expanding right up to the Russian border. What do we expect them to do? This probably is more closer to Alex Jones' actual opinion on this. Alex Jones, frankly, probably has a better opinion on this than the vast majority of Western journalists. That's how fucking sad it is. That's where we are right now. Or Maxime Bernier. I think it was... someone was linking the Maxime Bernier tweet. Yesterday, and I forgot to look at it. Maxime Bernier, fucking lunatic far right Canadian politician of the People's Party of Canada has a better stance on this, on Russia-Ukraine, than every single liberal Canadian journalist and every single NDP and Liberal Party member. Maxime Bernier has a better and more nuanced take on Russia and Ukraine than fucking any of these people. Here's Bernier. Anti-vax, anti-lockdown, anti-immigrant, fucking freak weirdo Maxime Bernier says whether Ukraine or Russia controls Donbass, Crimea is none of our business. Our priority must be to prevent a dangerous escalation of this war. Canada must stop sending money and weapons to Zelensky and instead work with all parties to reduce tensions. This is literally this is a better take than every single social democrat in Canada and every single liberal. This is how fucking embarrassing this is. How fucking off the rails. Oh, thank you, Progressive Canuck. Thank you.
Use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
He tried warning us.
What is this, Dimitri? Thank you for the 200 friend coin, Dimitri. I appreciate it.
Я хочу еще раз все-таки подчеркнуть это. Я говорил, но мне очень бы хотелось, чтобы вы меня услышали все-таки в конце концов. И донесли это до своих читателей, зрителей и пользователей в интернете. Но вы понимаете или нет, что если Украина будет в НАТО и военным путем будет возвращать себе Крым, европейские страны автоматически будут втянуты в военный конфликт с Россией. Конечно, потенциал объединенной организации НАТО и России несопоставим. Мы понимаем. Но мы также и понимаем, что Россия одна из ведущих ядерных держав. А по некоторым компонентам, по современности даже многих опережает. Победителей не будет. И вы окажетесь втянутыми в этот конфликт помимо своей воли. И вы даже не успеете глазом моргнуть, когда будете исполнять пункт 5 Римского договора. Господин президент, конечно, не хочет этого развития. И я не хочу. И я не хочу. Поэтому он здесь и находится, и мучает меня уже 6 часов подряд.
I understand the feeling of having that kind of weirdo having the same take as we do on a subject might be a clue. We are actually having a bad take, though. No, I don't think so. I think it's a sign that every liberal and social democrat has abdicated all responsibility for de-escalating this. They've all gone in the full pro-war, pro-NATO, pro-Western imperialist camp. And it's led right-wing dipshits like Maxime Bernier, like Tucker Carlson, like Alex Jones to have the only fucking anti-war stances out there. They've abandoned that stance and they've left the door open for Maxime Bernier and these right-wing dipshits to make these very reasonable statements. I don't think that is a sign that we are having a bad take on this. Look at his smug face. I'm willing to sacrifice as many Ukrainians as possible to stop him. Well, I remember watching this on this show. And according to our fucking nuanced geopolitical experts like fucking Maple Leafs journalist Bruce Arthur, the only thing we can possibly do is just continue backing this country right into the corner, right until they have no fucking options left. And anyone that says we should negotiate or we should stop pushing them into that, backing them into that corner, we should stop escalating this, get fucking shouted down and get called tankies and Putin sympathizers and whatever. Thanks to people like Rachel Maddow for teaching libs that Russians are genetically evil and therefore diplomacy is impossible. There was another take on this. I think it's in the Discord server, that Western journalist
that we're going to be making. Quiet, please, everybody. We're going to go for take now. Here we go.
He's got a hologram, just like Tupac or whatever.
We continue to We need to use next generation technologies. We need to make
Cool.
it feel like he's more in the room.
I don't think that I ever seen this.
Now you can take that little Zelensky and just put him right on your desk. You can put them right on your desk.
Technology before.
Oh, thanks, Marty. This is so fucking weird. I feel like I'm immune to this. Well, when you watch this show, you are immune to it. That's the genius. That's the brilliance of it.
There's two different types of hologram that we're going to be making. Quiet, please, everybody.
This
We're
is
gonna go for
Verhoeven
takeout.
shit. Yeah, this real wag the dog hours over here. But this is where we're at. You can't negotiate. When this is like... I don't think this is the tweet that I was referencing, Marty, but I'm going to check it out anyways.
The worst moment of the war for me was also the brightest, because as I stood over her intestines, I understood that we here in Ukraine and across the world who have souls and who are not Russians, who are not animals, who are not subhumans, could still make you the worst.
Great. Yeah. No, I was talking, Marty, about there was a tweet, I believe in the Cursed Takes channel, about like it was like a Western journalist.
Use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
Liberalism cannot view reality as is. It has a perverted idealistic self-fulfilling view. Conservatism and socialism view the world as it is, but with massive knowing difference of antithetical perspectives and goals.
Yeah, good point, Dimitri. Yeah, I mean, I was thinking that quote about liberalism is just bearing witness to suffering. That's so true as well. But yeah, they view the world through these rose-colored glasses, this idealized lens, what the world should be, not what it actually is. Reject any material analysis. Yeah, that's right. No, Marty, the one I was talking about was like the Western journalist. It's like you can't understand anything about Russia because all that Russia says about the war and everything that they say is always a lie. And it's like everything that they say is a lie. So you can't, at the moment you repeat anything that they say, you're doing a disservice because you're just repeating what their lies are. Okay, it's this. Yeah, okay, thank you. You were right, Marty. An extensive interview with me just came out in Euromaidan Press, where I touch on a significant number of topics. And she says, the media's role is clear. Report the truth. Report the facts. In my view, this means covering Ukraine with a discerning eye while never reporting the Russian view of any story. So report the truth, but don't report the Russian view of any story. Russia and the Russian version of this war is based on lies, falsehoods, and empty promises. Russia is the media world's most discredited source, a source that doesn't deserve the time of any credible journalist. Unlike our, of course, Western press, who would never lie, obviously, right? No American journalist or Canadian journalist would ever lie or obfuscate the truth, or would ever have an agenda to promote their own fucking geopolitical interests of their bosses or their sponsors and donors. Of course not. Only Russia lies. Only Russia lies about war. Only Russian media engages in propaganda. We in the West, we don't have propaganda and we're immune to it also, right? We're immune to the propaganda. This is where we're at. This is where we're at here. That's not the media's role. And what are they, 5 years old? And yeah, it's like, yeah, it can be actually really valuable. Even if you don't agree with the Russian perspective, it doesn't mean you agree, but it can actually be very valuable to understand what Russia's perspective is. That's why it's so dangerous banning RT and banning these like Russian media outlets. It's actually very valuable in these moments to understand what their perspective is, even if you don't agree with it. We don't have propaganda in the West. We have the purest, whitest truth, of course. Yes. We're in a liberal democracy that gives you plus 10 defense against propaganda. Very true. Yeah. Very true. Don't fret, for I have raised the propaganda shields. And I also wanted to go back to Bernier here for a sec, because we were talking about, someone was saying it's like broken clock syndrome. And here's why I think it's dangerous to allow people like Tucker Carlson or Bernier to have this the exclusive purview of this viewpoint, because they want to pivot to what they see as the real war with China. It says, I deplore the Russian invasion of Ukraine, but Canada has no business getting involved in this conflict. China is the biggest threat to our security. Western powers have horribly managed relations with Russia and pushed Russians into the arms of the Chinese. This is a massive geopolitical blunder. Our foreign policy shouldn't be based on the Biden family's business interests or Chrystia Freeland's family connections. This conflict is a diversion. Let's focus on our own problems, authoritarian leaders, sovereignty, and borders. People like Bernier and Tucker Carlson want to separate China and Russia from one another, and they want us to go after China. They want to stop focusing on Russia and start focusing more on China. That's why it's really dangerous to have them be the only ones articulating this kind of anti-war viewpoint. Why do we even need anyone's perspective to know that 99% of people have no interest in whether Donbass, etc., pays their taxes to Kiev or Moscow? This is what I was wondering. Why do you fucking care what the border of eastern Ukraine looks like? Why is it so important to you? We can never negotiate with Putler, giving them what they want, changing those borders of eastern Ukraine. Why is it fucking important to you? Why do you care? Ask yourself this question. All over the West, these fake-ass right-wing populists are posing as anti-war to sheepdog well-meaning people into reactionary parties. That is what is going on right now. And in our liberal friends and our social democrat friends and our pro-NATO leftists, they've all abdicated this responsibility. And they're opening the door for these exact people to empower themselves. That is an extremely dangerous situation. It makes sense that the most propagandized people on earth would be most likely to think they're immune to propaganda. Yes, it does. That's a big part of our propaganda. The fact that there's no such thing as propaganda here. One thing we haven't mentioned is how the global south views this conflict. Good point, John, as well, right? When we said the whole world stands with Ukraine. The whole world stands with Ukraine. It's like, well, no, it actually doesn't. That's actually not true at all. If you count only the former colonialist, predominantly white countries as the whole world, then maybe you're right, yes. But when you're talking about the global south, they have a much more nuanced and many times pro-Russian perspective of this. Almost all U.S. politics are reactionary and culture war-based.
You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Hello, Rob. Hope you are having a great day. Also, we are shirt twins.
Everyone also has goldfish brain and can't put any pieces together. It do be like that, don't it? And thank you, sorry, for the 14 months of Prime. Are you wearing the same shirt today? That's cool. Very cool. Because we care about the freedom of the Ukrainians living there, and we would rather have them die than live under Putler's rule. Seriously, this is what they'll say with zero skin in the game. Absolutely. And we'll put Ukrainians on the media that will make that claim. We'd rather die than live under Putin. And we'll put them on the media and we'll talk to them and we'll validate their lived experience. And when Ukrainians say, especially ethnic Russian Ukrainians say, actually, I don't want my country to be a war zone. Actually, I think NATO has contributed to this. Actually, I don't want to be a Western ally. Actually, I would like to end this conflict. We say that they're Russian-backed separatists or whatever, and they get chased down and fucking murdered in the country, or at the very least, they just get completely discredited, right? No, actually, Ukraine is going to say, actually, can we not turn my country into a war zone? We just say, well, you're that's obviously Putin talking. As usual, we only want to hear from certain. Listen to the Ukrainians. Which Ukrainians? Well, we know which ones. We want to listen to very specific ones. Just like we want to hear from very specific Uyghurs or Tibetans or Venezuelans or Cubans. We want to hear from the Cubans until they're ones that say things that we don't like. Then, of course, their opinion doesn't count. Or they're brainwashed regime apologists. Listen to the North Koreans. Only the ones that have been through the CIA brainwashing process and are just making up crazy shit about North Korea to get a little paycheck from it and become an international NGO celebrity. When a North Korean comes along and says, actually, I would like the United States to leave my fucking border and stop aiming missiles at my country. and maybe apologize for killing 3 million people in my country. We don't want to hear from them either. We only want to hear from very specific North Koreans and Venezuelans and Cubans and Ukrainians, right? The ones that say the things that we like and we want to hear. Libs in 2016 were able to understand people are not their governments, but from firsthand experience, not my president, but somehow the Russian people can be a monolithic reflection of their government. Yeah, why didn't they just overthrow the government yet? Cheeseburger? Why didn't they just overthrow their government? If they don't just overthrow their government every day, it means they must support it and they must agree with everything that they're doing. And that's why it's okay when they get burned up and incinerated and vaporized on a bridge, because they support the invasion, obviously, so they deserve it. The ones that are, we only want to hear from the ones that are yearning for something. That's correct. Yeah. Yeah, they're praying that the anti-collaborator death squads get those people. Yes, they are. Only listen to North Koreans that tell stories about people being forced to push that one train around the country. Yeah, or feeding rats to babies or whatever it is. Yeah. Okay. Now can we move on from this? Now can I move on? And there must be some, I've been talking this whole time. There must be some kind of video I can watch. There must be something. Breakthrough news is a thing about Saudi Arabia that just dropped. What else do we got here? What's on the good old YouTube?
On this issue of policing, they are.
There's a Danny Haifong video we could watch about this while we're on this topic. I don't know. I should probably take a brief moment, since I'm sitting at 5 subs currently, after 2 hours of this stream. It's got about another hour to go. But I probably should remind people that if you do enjoy this content, folks, if you do enjoy TRRS, and you want to support the work that I do here on Twitch, if you like having these dissenting
voices, you're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Rob. You can
count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, John, for the 18 months tier 2 resub. Thank you, John, and for all the supports you do. It really does sound like bra. And thank you, Dimitri, as well, for the gifted sub. Very much appreciated, Dimitri. But if you do want to support the stream, folks, you can join the community by subscribing, which costs $5. You can subscribe using a Twitch Prime account, totally free of charge. If you're an Amazon Prime member, you can subscribe to this channel completely free of charge, folks. Completely free of charge. You can also, there's a tip function you can use.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
You can gift friend coin as well. All of this helps. Sean, thank you very much for the gifted sub. I appreciate that, Sean. Thank you very much. I guess I just got to take a moment to do this, you know?
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
Who is the gaucho, amigo?
Why is he standing in your spangled leather poncho with your elevator shoes? Bodacious cowboys, such as your friends, will never be welcome here. High in the custard dome. Metal Dipshit, thank you for the 200 friend coin. Thank you. Little singing for you. And I didn't mention who it was, and we don't need to talk about it. Thank you for the 200 friend coin, though, Metal Dipshit. We do have a hype train coming soon. Sounds like it's breaking some kind of rule. No, I don't think it does. I don't think it is. I think that's allowable.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
I just came on and Rob is singing. There we go. That's what I've been doing this whole time, Nora. That's what I've been doing this whole time. And Biggerwig, thank you for the 23 months of Tier 1. Okay, you know one thing I have to do is I have to create now an ultra-exclusive 2-year sub badge. Biggerwig is almost at 2 years. Rob's just been singing for an hour and a half nonstop. That's right. We're getting close to 2 years for some people, so we got to do a 2-year. Two-year sub badge. Percolator Fish, I totally disagree with what you just said here.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
Okay, Dimitri, you've been really you've been pushing Dr. Horn a lot, and you've been really generous with the friend coin with the subs, Dimitri, which I appreciate a lot. I'm going to put that on next. The Dr. Horn clip. Oh, fuck me. What did you just say? Did everyone who is immune to propaganda not notice that all of the universities in the so-called Imperial West produce believers in the socialist project? I do not agree with that whatsoever. That they produce...
You've just become an elite member of the Friendship Triangle.
Believers in the socialist project. I think the vast majority of people that come out of those institutions might have left-wing views, but are almost all anti-communist. To a T. Who do not support actually existing socialism. They don't support North Korea. They don't support Venezuela. They don't support victims of Western imperialism because it's too difficult for them. They didn't support the Soviet Union in the 80s. They might have ostensibly left-wing views, but they're almost always, in geopolitical conflicts, come down on the side of Western imperialism, just as they're doing on the Russia-Ukraine conflict. All these so-called university socialists are all pro-NATO. So no, I don't agree with that at all. Yeah, it produces compatible leftists, not believers in the socialist project. So yeah, I totally disagree with what you just said. And Dimitri, thanks for the 5 gifted subs. Thank you, Dimitri. Very kind of you. Thank you. To the rest of the world, they're indistinguishable from John Bolton. Yeah. If you think universities in the West produce believers in the socialist project, I don't know what to tell you. I do not know what to tell you. I completely disagree with that. Half of these people end up becoming neocons. They're in college and they believe they're basically Trotskyists. Hardcore Trotskyites. Folks, they're hardcore Trotskyites. Like Christopher Hitchens, right? They're hardcore Trotskyites until it's time to support a war of Western aggression, and they become so paralyzed to stand with someone like Saddam Hussein or to be called Putin sympathizers that they end up just like becoming fucking neocons. That's the Trotskyite to neocon pipeline. Yes, you had the wrong idea. Yes. We'll be spending no more time on Percolator Fish's silly comments now. Percolator Fish has sent another silly comment. Why would we spend time responding to Percolator Fish? we shall neither like nor subscribe. Oh boy. Anyway, folks, we do have a bit of a hype train situation going on. I got a Gerald Horn video queued up to watch next, courtesy of Dimitri, which I'm actually looking forward to. And I am going to reach out to Professor Horn about possibly appearing on this show. We do have a hype train going up. Could we? And people were very generous yesterday. And people have been very generous to this program, especially over the last couple of weeks. Don't want to be a hard ass about it. I don't expect to get to level 7 or where we got to yesterday. We could, though. I believe we could get to 20 subs in the next.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you
I
through
really
all
believe
this.
that. I really believe that we could. 10,000 sandwiches. Thank you for the tier 1 sub. 10,000 sandwiches and for all the support. Thank you. Could we get some MIDI Steely Dan? I mean, Rob the hard ass Rousseau. That's what they call me. That is what they call me. Very true. That is a lot of sandwiches. Sorry, Sean. I misspoke. I'm positive we can get to 20 subs, though. I'm sure of it. I'm sure we can.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this. You've just become an elite member of the Friendship Triangle.
Oh my goodness.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Oh my goodness gracious. James, thank you for the gifted sub. Very much appreciated, James. Thank you so much, Dakadoon, for the 5 gifted subs. Thank you, Dakadoon. That's so kind of you. Thank you for all the support. I really, really appreciate it. And thank you also to Comrade Social Distancing for the gifted sub. A whopping, the all-time leader.
You're gonna have good old Rob to talk
still
you
the
through all
all-time
this.
leader in gifted subs, Comrade Social Distancing, with 772 gifted subs. That is fucking unbelievable. Thank you so much, Comrade Social Distancing. And thanks Riskinverse as well. Thank you, Riskinverse, for the gifted sub. My goodness. Do we have a full leaderboard for all-time sub gifts? I don't think we do. It might be possible to put one together. Am I an idiot mod that has access to that but don't know where to look? If that does exist, I do not know where to find it either. Sorry, somewhere Lodane is doing chores and has this on in the background, and I've hurled a full laundry basket to come over here and ban the next person who says 2 certain words. All-time leader in gifted subs until the EU self-immolated to please the USA. Well, that's the primary reason we need to get you back on your feet. Obviously. I can feel the cloud already entering my bloodstream, and boy did I need it. My headaches go away or become more manageable. Completely immune to all COVID-19. Immune to all COVID-19 variants, and can now live a 100% maskless lifestyle. Best of all, the Dan always sounds better when I'm firmly in the Friendship Triangle. Thank you, James. Okay. MOON, that spells misspoke. But for real, mask up in public still. I agree. Yeah. I don't endorse that. Did you ever release that music you made? No, I didn't, Maxie. I didn't. I know I should. I should do a lot of things, okay? I should do a lot of things. But I still have not. Our friend Carrier Wave remixed the theme song. That sounds great. I just got to get Carrier Wave to do a bunch more free work for me to mix the tracks. And then eventually.
Count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
I didn't mean to call you out. I was just wondering if it's floating around somewhere. If someone really wants to hear the music I've done and wants to just get the unmixed demo versions, you can just feel free to reach out on Discord and I'll hook you up. Here we go.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
I should do a lot of things has been my tagline for a while. That's one of the things I'm best at. Thank you so much, Don Dark Zoni, for the 3 gifted subs. Thank you, Don Dark Zoni. Very, very kind of you for all the support. I'll see you at the lunchroom later in the office in Langley. I can't even try. Can't even bother doing the air drums to this. Really struggling on those air tom rolls. Needs work. Yeah, needs work. I'm really good at air drumming to the song Gaucho though. I love the drum track in that one. I've got that down to like a fucking science. After this track, regardless of whether this hype train is continuing, I got to move on to this video. Johnny, you got to listen to the Genuine article, Asia. Okay, it's one of the greatest albums of all time. The reason it sounds like every smooth jazz record is that every smooth jazz record was influenced by it. That's why. I'd be really disappointed if the bottom said nothing. No, it's just that's all. Okay, here it comes. Okay. Okay. There we go. So here we go. So Dimitri has been suggesting this video for a while. I think it's a good time to... We talked enough about Russia, Ukraine. This is an Empire Files video. I love Empire Files. Love Abby Martin, former guest of my podcast. I've been talking about getting Abby on the show for so long. Eventually, it's going to happen. Eventually, I fucking promise Abby Martin will appear. on this program. Okay? That is a promise. That is a promise to you, the viewer. This is Gerald Horne on the American Revolution. Thank you so much to everyone for participating in the hype train and for supporting the channel. I love you all very much. Thank you so much. Very, very kind of you.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Hype.
Arachnozak, thanks for the 19 months. Resub at tier 3. Oh my goodness, Arachnozak, thank you.
Donald Trump hit his lowest moment as president when he blamed both sides for the murder of Heather Heyer, an anti-racist protester killed by a neo-Nazi in Charlottesville, Virginia.
You had a group on one side that was bad, and you had a group on the other side that was also very violent. And nobody wants to say that, but I'll say it right now. What about the alt-left that came charging at the, as you say, the alt-right?
Remember the big conspiracy theory about the Donald Trump blaming both sides was as a big liberal conspiracy theory? That was a fun thing. Guys like the Garfield guy or whatever was big on that. It was pretty fucking clear what was going on. He was simply saying that there was good people on the side of the neo-Nazis. That's all he was saying. He was just saying that there was neo-Nazis there, and there were some good people that were also there with them. That's all. I think if you're marching on the same side as neo-Nazis, that's actually not good. But I'm built different, I guess. The tankies were running at them, yes.
Have any semblance of guilt? But you had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists, okay?
Yeah.
And the press
It wasn't just neo-Nazis. The neo-Nazis were hanging out with a bunch of conservatives that were totally cool. They were just on the same side as the neo-Nazis, okay? Not neo-Nazis themselves.
Treated them absolutely unfairly. You're changing history, you're changing culture.
The Unite the Right rally, which unified various neo-Nazis and white supremacist groups, tried to mask itself as simply defending Southern history. But the Confederate monuments they claim to protect are open symbols of white supremacy, proven by the fact that the vast majority of them were erected long after the Civil War, during Jim Crow and the Civil Rights Movement. Understanding how a neo-Nazi sympathizer got in the White House requires breaking apart the myth underneath it all. The glorified story of the creation of the United States in 1776, honored with countless holidays and monuments. To learn more, I sat down with Professor Gerald Horne, Chair of African American Studies at the University of Houston, and author of more than 30 books, including The Counter-Revolution of 1776, Slave Resistance and the Origins of the United States of America. You mentioned the memorials for Civil War heroes,
there doesn't seem to be subtitles for this,
soldier statues. But the thing is, people will defend this and say, no, this isn't about racism. This is just about preserving a historical account of what happened. I mean, what's your response to those people who say this has nothing to do with racism?
Nobody's talking about tearing pages out of history books. So people can continue to publish books if they want, lauding their ancestors who fought for a discredited cause. But when you're talking about
the
monuments,
neo-Nazis to get directions how to get away from them.
I mean, for example, few people go to Germany and say, "Where are the monuments to Hitler and Goring?" Few people go to Italy and say, "Where are the monuments to Mussolini?" I mean, I recall when I was living in North Carolina in 2003, teaching at the University of North Carolina. In the University of North Carolina Chapel Hill campus, there's this Confederate statue with this gun pointing north. Obviously, they're meant to send a political signal. They're meant to send the signal that racism has not been defeated, that white supremacy has not been defeated. it's not only that, but I remember when I was doing my book on the Mexican Revolution, I went to El Paso, Texas to do research. And of course, El Paso, Texas has been the scene of massacres of Native Americans and dispossession of the Mexican-derived population. I didn't see any statues or monuments to this. And I mean, there was a Holocaust museum. Of course, I think that the point is clear, that they're trying to send us a signal. And the signal is that your struggle is not over.
So Squatch True, I can't help but notice that you just said seeking out those monuments would be weirdo stuff. The North went way too soft on the Confederates, which I agree with, by the way. But then it said after the war. W-O-R-E, war. That's kind of interesting. What's going on with that? After the war, like wore a t-shirt. Huh. Fascinating. War, what is it good for? Shook their hands and made some statues. And yeah, like they're pointing out, they did it. A lot of those statues didn't even make it made during the war or after the war, but like during the Jim Crow era. When you do it, Rob, it's just mean. Stop being mean. Oh, I can't. People can dish it out, but they can't take it. Is that it, Lodane? People can dish it out, but they can't take it. I see how it goes. Yes, that's it. Okay. The thing about that no Hitler statues argument is that eventually there will be. In Ukraine, they have Stefan Bandera streets. I'm sure in Italy, there'll be Mussolini statues back up. The Confederate statues were made in the 1950s. That's a good point, Zach. That is a good point. Too much coffee made me completely misspell that word for some reason. It's okay, Squatch. I'll let you off the hook. I'm just trying to show you how it feels, okay? I actually don't care when some of you make typos. It actually doesn't affect. I don't mind. Usually I'll understand the meaning that you meant, and I'll just read the word that you meant, and it totally slides off my back, and I don't even care. Maybe you'll know how it feels when people are mean and cruel to you for the small crime of misspeaking, the small crime of making this little verbal slub. I committed a war crime. Maybe you'll understand how it feels when people say mean and hurtful things to you, like Sigma tits or buy it quoke. I hate it when I'm a professional speaker and someone makes fun of my professional speaking. That's exactly, thank you. Or fall of the hot dog. What was with that? That one was maybe legitimate. As a dad with dad drip, I commit war crimes every day. There we go. There we go. A verbal slub, but that's it. Maybe you'll know how it feels now. Not so nice, is it? Anyway.
So we're told a very specific story about the foundation of the United States with this revered 1776 revolution. A very specific narrative, right? It's the founding fathers' desire to have freedom and democracy from the British monarchy. Dr. Horn, you detail in your book how it was actually about maintaining a slaveocracy. But before we get into that, let's set the stage here. In what ways were slave systems declining at the time, and why were they declining?
Well, you may have to go back to the 1600s. At the beginning of the 17th century, that is to say the beginning of the 1600s, England was basically a failed state. That continued for a few decades. That is to say, through the 1640s, when there was the beheading of the king, and a kind of quasi-bourgeois revolt under Oliver Cromwell when the king was deposed. And then you have the sugar boom. And the sugar boom, of course, leads to a takeoff in enslavement of Africans. It leads to a takeoff in wealth as well. And by 1672, you had the formation of the Royal African Company, that is to say the systematizing and regularizing of the African slave trade. Then by 1688, you have the real so-called bourgeois democratic revolution, with the Glorious Revolution, as it was called, which in many ways was all about having merchants take part of the challenge of bringing Africans across the Atlantic, and the slave trade no longer being under the sole domination of the monarch, but opened up to the merchant class. And that leads to a gigantic leap forward in the slave trade. It leads to a gigantic leap forward in wealth, but it also leads to a gigantic leap forward in terms of slave resistance and slave revolts. With regard to the Caribbean, keep in mind that until 1750, London felt that its most valuable colonial possessions were the Caribbean, particularly Jamaica. By 1730, it was felt that the whole colonial project in Jamaica might collapse. This causes a reconsideration by the Crown and leads to what I call a great trek from the Caribbean to the North American mainland, when slave owners in the Caribbean started moving en masse from Antigua, from Barbados, from Jamaica to the North American mainland. Alexander Hamilton, for example, the star of this Broadway hit Hamilton. Of course, he was born in Nevis in the Caribbean, and is an exemplar of this great trek that's taking place. But unfortunately for them, coming to North America did not mean that they escaped the wrath of fearsome, angry, resentful Africans. And so the Africans rose up in South Carolina, 1739. They began marching towards St. Augustine, Florida. But alas, they were intercepted and were massacred en masse, with their heads, of course, cut off and put on pikes along the road to intimidate Africans going forward.
What were some of the tactics that slaves were using to revolt?
Well, other than these mass slave revolts, of course, there are poisonings. That was particularly a tactic of enslaved women who used poisonings. And of course, they were oftentimes working in the household. Arson is another tactic. Burning down the slave owner's home. Arson was very much in play in 1741 in Manhattan. And of course, just individual acts of resistance, murdering the master, fist fights where the master winds up with a crushed skull or something of that sort. I don't think you can begin to understand the violent culture that exists in the United States today without understanding the violence that led to the creation of this nation. For example, this fabled Second Amendment to the United States Constitution, which helps to justify individuals carrying arms, even into classrooms, believe it or not. It comes from a time when the framers of the Constitution felt that there needed to be militias to suppress revolts of enslaved Africans, that is to say, armed citizenry, European citizenry, to repress armed Africans, and of course, rampaging and marauding Native Americans at the same time. And this is causing some in London to reconsider the very nature of this project of colonialism based upon enslavement of Africans. And so in 1772, you have Somerset's case, which seems to suggest that London is going to move towards the abolition of slavery. Certainly, as a result of Somerset's case, slavery is abolished in England, shortly thereafter in Scotland. This infuriates and arouses the slave-owning class in the United States, led by George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison. Even in the North, John Adams in Boston is a lawyer for slave owners. John Hancock, whose signature is on the founding document, of course, is one of the biggest slave owners in New England. Rather than see this form of property be abolished, causing great losses in their income, they revolt against the crown. I should also say that in 1763, there was the Royal Proclamation, where London was tiring of expending blood and treasure, moving westward, fighting Native Americans, taking their land. But George Washington, a land speculator, a real estate speculator, not unlike the current occupant of the White House, by the way, felt that this would jeopardize his future projects, and that's a further reason to revolt. So in other words, the revolt leading to foundation of the United States was based upon continuation of the slave trade, continuation of slavery, and continually fighting the Native Americans to take their land.
We learn a lot about the Boston Tea Party, right? This emancipation from taxation. What was really behind the rebellion?
There were those in London who felt that slavery and dispossession of Native Americans had to be restrained. And one way to do that was taxes, putting a tax on imports of Africans. And if you had less Africans, there would be less of a need for land of the Native Americans. But of course, there were those in North America who objected to that kind of taxation.
So now we get to 1776 and what we know as the American Revolution, which you call a counter-revolution. Why?
I call it that because it's an attempt to reverse the tides of history. Britain was moving towards abolition of slavery, but also to limit their ability, the settlers' ability, to steal Native Americans' land. And
I think it's really important to understand this context of the American Revolution as well, because it tries to, like Dmitry is saying, MAGA communists hate Dr. Horn, and I welcome their hatred. When people try to frame the American Revolution as being some kind of act of radical anti-colonialism or something like that, some kind of successful anti-colonialist revolution, which is like very, I think when you analyze these class characteristics like he does, it's very clearly not that. And I think it's important to understand that history. To not get any ideas about the American Revolution, the foundation of America, being on these like wonderful values of freedom and freedom from colonial domination. It wasn't a revolution; it was a schism of the British Empire. Yeah, and it shows like the eventual rulers of America would become the global colonialist leader. Right? There wasn't a dispute about colonialism. They wanted to be the colonialists. They wanted to be in charge. They wanted to keep the slave trade. They wanted to continue, the mass genocide of indigenous peoples. Yeah, I didn't realize the slave tax was a factor. The way they show it, it's all about tea. Exactly. It seems like the history on this has been maybe slightly exaggerated. And we inherited their empire in the end. That's right, after World War II. I'd love to hear what NAFO would have said in 1776. Thinking about NAFO takes throughout history would be really interesting. You got to support the tankies supporting the North Vietnamese. The real NAFO fellas support our wonderful South Vietnamese freedom fighters. All throughout history. If you can imagine them taking the worst stance on every single imperialist conflict. I think the part about tea is deceiving too. IRC, they lowered the tax on tea, which undercut a large underground bootleg economy that was happening so the capitalists stood to lose money. It was not a brave act of anti-colonialist resistance. I was just thinking how cursed it would be if they were around for the Iraq War. Of course, the Saddam lovers, the Saddam-loving tankies who don't want war in Iraq. Of course, that's what they would be saying. Is a textbook reactionary revolution, yeah. The tanky Saddam lovers against the war. Why do you love Saddam? Why do you love the Taliban? These Taliban and Saddam loving tankies that are against the wars. The Americans are just revolting so they can take better care of the slaves. That's what they would be saying, yeah. Those goddamn tanky Baathists, yeah. Jesus Christ, what an embarrassing people. I'm thinking of those stupid NAFO avatars, but in the Saddam's hypothetical bunker graphic where he's laying down. Fucking Jesus, these people.
And rather than accede to that decision, they rebelled. Now, that sounds like a counter-revolution to me, and I think it sheds light on some of the problems we still have in the United States of America. Problems in terms of how the black population is treated, in terms of still seen as enemies of the state, because historians have known for quite a long time that by several orders of magnitude, the Africans in North America sided with London in that fight in 1776. They did not side with the settlers, except that the historians haven't drawn the inference, the reasonable inference from that they were opposed to the settlers' project. And when you fight a war and lose, as the Africans did, as my ancestors did, you can expect to be pulverized and punished forevermore until you're able to turn the tables.
Karl Marx said that capitalism came into being with the blood of African slaves gushing from its every pore.
That's right.
How did slavery provide the basis for the rise of capitalism in the U.S.?
First of all, in terms of cotton, which is this major export market, and this major export opportunity, the textile mills of Western Europe were supplied by the labor of enslaved Africans. It's felt that in 1860, at the time the U.S. Civil War was about to commence, that the most valuable investment in the United States was the investment in the bodies of enslaved Africans. You should also know that even though slavery was mostly centered in the South, a lot of the financing of the slave trade was actually in New York. A lot of the slave ships were leaving from Baltimore and Boston. Rhode Island had been a center of the African slave trade for the longest. So in other words, the ships were being dispatched from the north. Keep in mind as well that after the United States supposedly abolished the international slave trade under London and Haitian,
the North being some like bastion of anti-slavery or anti-racism resistance as well. That's a central building block of the whole liberal myth of America, right? You know, yeah. In addition to the revolution being some kind of active anti-colonial resistance, but the North was always against slavery. Of course, the North was not racist like the South was, which is complete bullshit, as we know. Complete bullshit. Slavery was so unimportant to the founders that they enshrined it in the founding document of this country. Exactly. The thing that Americans are supposed to fucking worship and revere like it's the 10 Commandments or whatever.
Pressure, circa 1808, an illegal slave trade commenced. But you should also know that after 1865, you had a kind of diaspora. That is to say that slave owners wanted slavery to continue. So many of them moved with their enslaved Africans to Cuba, where slavery didn't end until the 1880s. Many of them moved to Brazil with their enslaved Africans, where slavery doesn't end until 1888. And of course, many of them moved to the South Seas, where they begin to kidnap Melanesians and Polynesians and take them to work as bonded laborers in Queensland, Australia, and in Fiji in particular. That's one of the reasons why the Hawaii Kingdom was overthrown, because it tries to object, and for objecting, it winds up being overthrown as well.
Unbelievable. Yeah, you're even saying free Africans within the U.S. were getting kidnapped and brought to the South.
Yeah, not only that, but dark-skinned, well, oh my goodness. Dark-skinned people anywhere on planet Earth were unsafe because U.S. ships, I mean, they'd sell into Argentina, for example. Let's say Argentina had abolished slavery. They'd see a dark-skinned person walking down the street, they kidnap him. Next thing you know, he's in Louisiana working on a slavery plantation. So you cannot begin to understand the great wealth of the United States of America without understanding the slave trade and slavery. I remember in 1989 when there was all the unrest in Eastern Europe and there was this idea that these countries were going to build a societies like the United States. Well, I was thinking to myself, well, yeah, if you have hundreds of years of slavery and you can get people to work for free, sure, you can build an advanced society too. It's scandalous what has taken place in this country. And sadly enough, the revelations are just beginning to come out, in part because for decades, part of the problem with writing history in the United States is people like me, people of my ancestry, were not allowed into archives. That's only been a development of the last few decades. And now that that's the case, now I can go into the archives and uncover the stories, and that wasn't possible previously.
And
let's move on to the Civil War.
Use the computer to mark up the
so
size
many
of the
narratives
account.
here. On one hand,
Dimitri, thank you. No problem indulging your Dr. Horn obsession. I really appreciate having you back in the chat, and I'm happy to be turned on to more of Dr. Horn's work. I'm absolutely going to reach out to him to bring him on the show for sure. But it's my pleasure.
we're told that these altruistic leaders just really wanted to end slavery, right? On the other hand, it had nothing to do with slavery. Your thoughts?
It has everything to do with slavery. And I think my argument is that the so-called Confederate States of America, which rebels against Washington in order to perpetuate slavery forevermore, there's a reason why there are still Confederate monuments in the United States of America. Usually when you lose a war, you don't have monuments built to...
What do you think his beverage of choice is? I don't know. Do we think he's a coffee guy? I was going to say maybe tea. But I don't know. I don't think tea is it. Ginger ale? Exactly. Consolidating that wealth in the hands of Southern planters couldn't have happened without slavery. People wouldn't work for wages if there was all that free real estate just over the hill. Yeah. Big brained room temp water drinker. That could be it as well. This man drinks Ovaltine. Well, we'll see. If I can get him on the show, we'll ask him. We're going to get to the bottom of this. And we'll ask him about certain 70s jazz rock bands and see whether he appreciates them or not. We don't need to get into the names of those bands and what those are and what they aren't. But I'm going to ask about it, though. Believe me. Believe me. There are ways, dude. Believe me.
The losers. But even Los Angeles, where we're now sitting, there are still monuments to Confederates. There was just an article in the LA Times about that a few days ago. Certainly in the South, in Texas, and Mississippi, Alabama, there are monuments to losers. And I think that the reason is that the Confederates felt that they were walking the footsteps of 1776, and that Washington, which was under tremendous pressure from British abolitionists, Britain being the major superpower of that time. So Washington was seeking to accede to international pressure. The Confederates, that is to say Dixie, Virginia, Texas, were digging in their heels and saying, hell no. And then that leads to the Civil War. The sainted Abraham Lincoln wants to resolve this conflict in part by enlisting Negroes, black people, to fight against the Confederates. And that, of course, was the turning point in terms of defeating the Confederates.
Written a number of books on jazz history. That's interesting. Very interesting. Lennon was amazed at powdered drink technology and only drank Country Time lemonade. That's one of those comments that it just like, it seems like a joke to me, but it could be true for all I know. I don't know.
Who actually were losing, the Confederates were winning up until Lincoln makes that fateful decision. But then, until maybe a few months before he was shot in 1865, his idea was to deport all the Negroes. There was talk about deporting us to Dominican Republic. I've often told graduate students that somebody could write a very interesting book on all the different attempts to expel black people from North America, going back to the founding of the United States, continuing through the 1930s, when there was this African resettlement bill filed by Senator Theodore Bilbo of Mississippi to get rid of all the Negroes. My book on Haiti basically ends with the failed attempt to deport all the U.S. Negroes to the Dominican Republic. It only fails by a very slim margin in the U.S. Congress. Otherwise, there might not be any black people in the United States to this very day.
How was the Confederacy really defeated, and how did slaves and former slaves play a role in that?
Well, W.E.B. Du Bois, the great black intellectual, wrote in a book called Black Reconstruction that came out some 80-odd years ago, that there was what he called a general strike on the plantations, that the slaves basically abandoned.
God, and that's one regret I have about this show, is that I promised to do more content about Reconstruction, and maybe Horn would be good to talk about this, but I think that's such an important era in American history that really helped create modern America, the failures of Reconstruction. And that's something that I don't think is focused on enough when we learn about American history. That's something that I've promised to spend more time on that on this show. In fact, if I recall, I think I got sidetracked when I was trying to do more like Black American history content, and got sidetracked by Russia and Ukraine, because that's when it really kicked off, if I remember correctly. Because I think it's in February, right? And I had wanted to do more content about Reconstruction and didn't, but that's really something that we all need to focus on. And that I promise, I pledge to still talk more about this, because learning about Reconstruction and the failures of Reconstruction really, really will help us all understand modern America a lot better. From what I remember from my history classes, it went from the Civil War to World War I without much in between. That's right. Yeah, not a lot went on during that time. I believe so. That's when I joined the community. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. They did not hang enough slave owners. No, they didn't. And a lot of the time they just let them off with a little handshake and was like, okay, you can have your plantations back now. Just no more slaves. Yeah. We will focus on this, though. We will do that. We will have some dedicated Reconstruction content on this show, because I think it's really, really important in understanding American history, and it's a big gap that we don't learn about enough.
The plantations, and they, of course, were necessary to production. And once the slaves withdrew their labor, the jig was up with regard to the Confederate States of America.
Chrisman is good on Reconstruction if he's not banned? Of course not. Would be happy to talk to him. Would be happy to talk to Matt Chrisman if that was a possibility. I don't know. It might be more that I'm banned than he is, but I don't know. Would be happy to talk to him.
Then, of course, it's what I already suggested, that many of the Africans then joined the Washington's army, the Union Army, to
gave the slave owners reparations, and also like created this situation where, put a lot of the same people back in power. Also had them, even though they gave them a lot of the political power that they had back and a lot of their lands and titles back, also made them feel super aggrieved about their loss of property, and then just just took off and abandoned the area and allowed the KKK to rise and just kind of wiped their hands of it and didn't do fucking anything to stop them. Carpetbaggers are the OG Harvard boys, yeah. Like that's a big part of it too, right? You just allowed this like paramilitary militia to operate, fucking terrorizing these newly freed black communities, and instead of like doing something to put that down, just fucking did nothing about it, and just took off and said like, well, best of luck to everyone. Best of luck to everyone. This does sound familiar, yeah.
To defeat the Confederates, and of course, that was seen as almost like a violation of international law by the Confederate States of America, arming Africans, because that was something that you should never do.
If only they treated the South like they treated the Russians.
In the hands of black people. Something that perhaps we can talk about that still has a contemporary resonance at a certain point. And so African prisoners of war were oftentimes just slaughtered en masse. They were not seen as legitimate soldiers. They were just killed when captured.
In the aftermath of slavery, how did new rulers, white rulers, deal with this new sense of empowerment?
With difficulty. I mean, first of all, there's the organizing of the Ku Klux Klan. That is to say, the so-called white terrorist organizations that arise even as the Civil War is unfolding. Their numbers skyrocket after the end of the Civil War, circa 1865, and they begin to terrorize black people in particular, trying to make sure that they don't vote, which of course is a theme today in 2017.
Like what was I just saying? The way Reconstruction sets the stage for modern America. There it is right there. Still going on to this day.
That is to say, the execution of black people who won't stay in their place, to persecute black people who they feel are becoming too uppity, who are trying to basically exercise their citizenship rights to vote, etc. And then they continued throughout the 19th century. Of course, in cities like Wilmington, North Carolina, which is on the Atlantic coast, there is a coup d'etat to overthrow a black-led government and chase out of town all the black officials. So this Ku Klux Klan and this terrorism and this attempt to continue slavery then, of course, has a new lease on life in the World War I period, when President Woodrow Wilson, a Democrat, seeks to impose Jim Crow or U.S. apartheid rules on the bureaucracy of Washington, D.C. At the same time, you have the new cultural product that is cinema that begins to boom in Birth of a Nation, one of the first big blockbusters in Hollywood, basically glorifies the Ku Klux Klan. It was like a recruiting broadside for the Ku Klux Klan. It's one of the first movies ever shown in the White House. And that leads to a further surge in the Ku Klux Klan, which by the 1920s actually is ruling state houses and state legislatures and has expanded its remit.
You don't hear much about this, do you, Marty?
They had mostly, from their point of view, completed their dirty work by the end of the 19th century. But with, as I said, the rise of Woodrow Wilson, they have a new lease on life with Birth of a Nation. And then by the 1920s, they're marching in the thousands in Washington, D.C., have state houses, but then certain scandals cause their numbers to decline. But of course, they sort of morph in the 1930s into other kinds of Klan-like groups called the Black Legion, which are particularly strong in the state of Michigan and are fighting union organizing.
These nerds,
in particular, in
They're
the state of
nerds.
Michigan. Then they have another new lease on life in the 1950s with the anti-colonial stirrings in Africa, the Caribbean, which puts wind in the sails of black American protesters. who start pushing against Washington. There's a major march on Washington in 1957, for example, which of course leads to a counter-reaction with the rise of the Ku Klux Klan once again in the 1950s and 1960s, and the execution of voting rights activists, particularly in Mississippi in 1964. And now with the rise of Donald J. Trump, skipping over a few decades where they were also active, you see another sort of resurgence, not only of the Ku Klux Klan, but they have different names now, but the project is still the same. I mean, some people call them the alt-right, not seeing the United States as some sort of democratic experiment, but an experiment in constructing a white man's country that was only pushed back with extreme difficulty. And now, because that monster was really never defeated, ultimately. I mean, for example, the idea with regard to the U.S. Civil War, 1861 to 1865, is that the Confederacy was defeated militarily, but not politically. And that's clear in the sense that there are Confederate monuments all over the place. Their ideology continues
they kind of won
to percolate.
In many ways.
The whole 20th century was defined by this kind of anti-black mob violence, where you see news reports today saying, oh, this is the largest, mass killing in U.S. history. It's like, no, it actually is. That's not true. There were several mob attacks. I mean, can you go over how egregious this was?
Well, first of all, you need to realize that lynchings, which is, generally speaking, the execution of black men and women without due process of
they won the same way the Nazis
without due
won World
process
War II.
of law,
Exactly.
usually hanging them from a tree.
You can count on me
or
and have good
burning
old
them
Rob to
at the
talk you
stake.
through all this.
America bad. Yeah, I said it.
Oh my God, Blueberry. 22 months of tier 1. Thank you. A little outrageous comment though. Okay? You know I respect the marketplace of ideas. You know I respect freedom of speech. Let's watch it though, okay? Let's be careful with what we say on here. Because that's pretty controversial what you're saying right now. What the hell? I know. Jesus. I'm a little shaken up. I'm shaken up right now. Thank you, Blueberry. But yeah, Zach, like the same way the Nazis won World War II, and it's kind of the same people, the same ruling class that extended a hand in friendship and allowed them to get up off the mat, as they did with the Nazis in World War II. Kind of the same ruling class that said, like, okay, you've had enough. Now you can come back to your position. Very interesting. Please accept my truth. America not as good as America claims. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. That's fucking outrageous. Both Nazis and Confederates found refuge in the bosom of the US of A. One more strike, Blueberry, and I was going to choke slam you to the TwitchCon ball pit. Yeah, just instant spine shattering. Instant spine shattering, if that's the case. Getting a little too subversive. Okay, but this is actually very serious shit about these mass pogroms that were going on, so let's actually try and pay attention to this. Stop messing around, chat. Stop messing around here, distracting me.
Usually hanging them from a tree without due process of law, usually hangings.
Egregious this was.
Well, first of all, you need to realize that lynchings, which is, generally speaking, the execution of black men and women without due process of law, usually hanging them from a tree or burning them at the stake, and then
horrifying
cutting off the digits. Oftentimes, I'm afraid to say that in certain white homes to this day, you can find pickled digits of black men and black women.
Christ.
You need to realize that these were like picnics. You can still find postcards of masses of whites watching as some black person is burnt at the stake or swinging from a tree. It's
like no fucking wonder it's called the Great Satan. I don't want to say it like that. It sounds bad. Fucking horrifying. Horrifying. And this is after the end of slavery. Like, this is Reconstruction. This is what was going on during Reconstruction when all these wounds were healed. How many active members of Senate or House in the U.S. are descendants of those lynch mobs? Very good question. Very, very good question. God, that's fucking
It's like
horrifying.
an exercise in white solidarity. You'll see in 1957, when there was an attempt to desegregate the schools of Little Rock, Arkansas, there's a mass white revolt against that. In the 1960s, when there was an attempt to desegregate the University of Mississippi at Oxford, a mass white revolt. 1970s, to show it's not a regional phenomenon, when you had the busing crisis in Boston, that is to say, an attempt to desegregate.
Didn't Joe Biden play a large role in that? The busing issue? Wasn't that one big thing that Joe Biden was all about supporting? Am I crazy? Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe Joe Biden had some interesting statements about busing during this time. Yeah, gotta ask his VP about it. Yeah. It was a debate.
Segregate the public schools. In Boston, there was a mass white revolt. 1980s in Yonkers, when there was an attempt to desegregate housing in this New York City suburb, there was a mass white revolt. It's political persecution. That is to say, it's political persecution because we, my ancestors, fought against the creation of the United States, fought against the idea of a white man's country. And so the idea was we should be punished and pulverized and persecuted forevermore. We were able to push back slavery, and then they slapped apartheid on us. And now we have a kind of neo-apartheid, because part of the complaint right now, as you probably heard, is that there are too many unqualified Negroes in universities and colleges. And so there needs to be a systematic effort and campaign to root them out.
Yeah, now we're getting this mass critical race theory
that's underway
pushback
as we speak. But once again, I think that this kind of persecution
it's the 2022
is
version.
not accidental. It comes out of a particular political and historical context.
Stop wokeism.
That has really never been
woke
grappled
nonsense.
with honestly, even by some of our friends on the left.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the alt-right, because of course you hear this concept of whiteness, this identitarianism. Whiteness is being threatened, whether it's on college campuses or just the whole race, white genocide, right? This is somehow a thing. Where does whiteness come from?
Well, that's a very good question.
The thing about white genocide, though, is that it's not a conspiracy theory. It's real, and it's actually good, and I support it.
Fortunately, the scholars have been busy on this subject, and they've asked a fundamental question, which is how and why did it happen that those who were warring on the shores of Europe, English versus Irish, English versus Scotch, Irish Protestant versus Irish Catholic, English versus French, German versus French, Serb versus Croat, Russian versus Pole, once they crossed the Atlantic, somehow magically, they're transmuted into this white population. So how did that happen? How did that identity get created? There was this opening of the door to European immigrants because the rulers of this country were concerned about the racial correlation of forces. They needed to have more people defined as white so that people could occupy the land of the Native Americans. So that opened up many opportunities.
Let's talk about the NRA, because there's another message being clearly sent to African Americans in this country from this organization. Back to the Black Panthers. I mean, you could talk about that. You could talk about the insane call for a civil war. I don't know if you saw that ad.
And then they use their ex-president to endorse the resistance, all to make them march, make them protest, make them scream racism and sexism and xenophobia and homophobia, to smash windows, burn cars, shut down interstates and airports, bully and terrorize the law-abiding, until the only option left is for the police to do their jobs.
Yeah, this fucking ad is crazy.
The madness.
Remember this?
And when that happens, they'll use it as an excuse for their outrage. The only way we stop this, the only way we save our country and our freedom, is to fight this violence of lies with the clenched fist of truth. I'm the National Rifle Association of America, and I'm freedom's
This
safest
shit was so
place.
insane.
Well, first of all, with regard to Black Panthers, I'm sure you're making reference to the fact that in 1967, the newly organized Black Panther Party in California.
And God's Own Drunk, thanks for the suggestion. That sounds really interesting. I'm going to check that out.
Marched into the Legislative Assembly in the state of California in Sacramento armed to send a political message, and that was legal. That led even the NRA and even the recently elected governor of California, one Ronald Wilson Reagan, to come out in favor of gun control. because gun control, it's not meant for everybody. That is to say that gun control is meant for me and my community, but gun ownership is meant for the white right, the alt-right, the white supremacists, etc. The white right makes it clear that they're in favor of mass gun rights because they say, I mean, I'm not just making this up.
ML thought is
that they haven't ruled out the possibility of a mass armed uprising if there's a government not to their liking. And I mean, what do they want? I mean, they rule most of this country. I mean, but I guess that's not good enough. Sometimes people want to see Trump as an anomaly, once again, an aberration. But obviously they haven't been paying attention. In 1991, a Klansman and a Nazi, David Duke, got 55% of the white vote in Louisiana running for governor.
Repeat that again, 1991.
1991, David Duke, a self-proclaimed Nazi and Klansman, got 55% of the white vote running for governor of Louisiana. Took a massive turnout by black people in order to nip that campaign in the bud. And so when people sort of act like Donald J. Trump fell from the sky, they haven't been paying attention, which I understand.
That's
because
once again liberals' inability to process history.
And even if you look at Donald J. Trump, if you look at some of the key documents on the rise of fascism, such as the writings of Georgy Dimitrov, the Bulgarian leader of the 1930s, who was fighting Hitler all across Europe during that time, the idea was that fascism is usually a response to the rise of a left. And rather than accede to that, the US ruling class, a ruling class, will then try to repress that left by any means necessary, by enacting a naked, bloody dictatorship of the most terroristic and right-wing elements of society. Well, we're talking, I think, understandably and realistically about a neo-fascist in the White House. But if you look in the United States of America, even if you're an optimist, it's difficult to see a very...
This is a few years old, Left is Best. I don't know if she does anything still for Telesur, but this is a few years old.
Strong left-wing movement. So how does that happen?
Right.
Well, I think it's in part related to the so-called race question. That is to say, even though Barack Obama was little more than the chief executive, the chief of the executive committee of the U.S. ruling class, and basically ruled in their...
Percolator Fish, why are you concerned about colonized peoples returning to the culture and society they had before Europeans imposed their own values on them? Why is that any concern of ours? Why is that something we're worried about? I don't know. Oh, Percolator Fish, fuck off. What are you talking about? Jesus Christ. Thank you, Lodane. God damn.
Favor. I think that for the alt-right, that stirred some of the deepest recesses in the far corners of their brain about the rise.
What was the last dumbass comment? It was like, what's going to prevent them from falling into like witchcraft and fucking mass human sacrifice? They always talk about this mass human sacrifice with the Aztecs and everything, but somehow the mass genocide of all the Aztecs, millions of people, doesn't count as mass human sacrifice. For some reason, that's only something that these primitive cultures engaged in. Of course, the mass genocide of all these millions of people, that doesn't count as mass human sacrifice, though. We have mass human sacrifice right now for capitalists still to this day. Yeah, they always say this as if the history of Europe wasn't always just a complete fucking bloodbath. It's fucking absurd.
Rise of black people.
And yeah, and that's true. Who was that? Blueberry. We also take the Spanish at their word about what the Aztecs did. For sure. We were just watching human sacrifice 2 minutes ago under the Klan. Yeah. Like other than conquistador records, they have very little evidence of how massive these Aztec human sacrifices were. Yeah, I think I don't doubt that actual history is very disputed. I'm really scared of witches in their inhuman ways, says the guys that burned witches for being women that could live on their own. Yeah, exactly. You wouldn't want those scary witches to take over.
Which has been part of the Black Scare, as I've called it. And so I think that this...
I was sorry, I don't mean to keep interrupting. I wonder why almost all the historical records kept by these natives were destroyed under... Wonder what lessons we may have learned. Yeah, it's interesting. We just destroyed all those historical records. And we destroyed all evidence of their like extremely advanced civilization that they discovered. This is something that Open Veins of Latin America really gets into a lot. Because what were they told? Yeah, they're just these barbarians. They're these barbarians that were engaging in this mass human sacrifice. They had no culture, no science, no education, no anything. And it's the complete opposite of reality. Like they destroyed these beautiful, intricate cities and art and the incredible advanced architecture and all the amazing things that these societies had accomplished were just completely fucking burned and melted down to nothing. And then they wrote the history, the colonizers wrote the history books after them and framed them as just being these human sacrificing savages, basically. Take care, Badrino. Talk to you later.
Neo-fascism, in some sense, it's a reaction, a very distorted reaction to the Obama phenomenon. I mean, I don't think it's accidental that Donald J. Trump, he begins to catapult into prominence.
The people here before us, yeah, they were weird, man. You wouldn't like them. Yeah. They killed one person for a month of rain. How barbaric. Meanwhile, killing tens of thousands a month for oil is what civilized countries do. Yeah. Rob, if you have a minute, you should check out the Alex Jones verdict that just came down. I have to go really soon. I got to go pick up my kid from school really soon. He's going to be mad if I leave him there too long because he's in like the after school program, but I don't think he's absolutely thrilled about it. This is almost over. Maybe I can take a brief look at it. Then I got to go.
This birther phenomenon saying that Obama was not born in Hawaii. He was actually born in Kenya. And I think that has brought us to this point where we are today.
10 million people die every year.
You have a nation.
Have good old Rob
because it's not profitable enough to feed
this.
them, or house them. We let people die of starvation and fucking die of exposure during the winter because it costs. It's not profitable to give them homes, even though it costs less. It costs more to have the system as it is now. And Comrade Social Distancing, thank you for the gifted sub. Thank you. Holy shit. Okay, Metal Dipshit, I'm going to look at this in 1 sec.
That's basically built on counter-revolution. Not only built on counter-revolution, built upon a falsehood about liberty and democracy and equality. And you really never come to grips with that. Well, Donald J. Trump is just a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. They have this very naive view of the United States. They want to cling to this idea of the founding fathers and the framers of the Constitution and this document that will live forever, when actually it was designed to encode the rights of slave owners and creditors. And it seems to me, as long as you don't come to grips with that, well then all other kinds of opportunism becomes very easily. Because if you can rationalize genocide and you can rationalize enslavement, well, you can rationalize anything.
That was fucking great, Dimitri. Thanks for the video recommendation. That was awesome. I will get Gerald Horn on this show. I will get him on the show. Okay? Thanks again, Dimitri. But friend of Epstein, Steven Pinker, says that capitalism actually lifts people out of poverty. Well, that's the irony, Bigger Rig, is that it does in China. Not so much here, though. That was a great interview. Too bad it's on Maduro's tanky Vuvuzela media network and is therefore all lies. That's right. That's very unfortunate. Court clerk. So here's the Alex Jones trial right now. Court clerk reads the verdict. Rules that Alex Jones and InfoWars must pay total damages of $120 million to Robbie Parker. To David Wheeler, $55 million. Francine Wheeler, a total of $54 million. Jacqueline Barden, a total of $28.8 million. Mark Barden, $57.6 million. Nicole Hockley, a total of $73.6 million. Ian Hockley, a total of $81.6 million. Jennifer Hensel, a total of $52 million. Donna Soto, a total of $48 million. Carly Soto Parisi, a total of $66 million. That seems bad. That seems bad for old Alex Jones. I don't know. I'm not great at math. I'm not great at math. I feel like that's a lot. That seems like a lot to me. He's going to need a lot of hype trains. That's right. And I'm sure they're going to fight it. And I'm sure it's going to be, there's going to be some fine print. I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, but it's still enjoyable when terrible things happen to bad people. So I think we can take a small moment to laugh. Reuters says 965 million. That is indeed a lot. That is indeed a whole lot of scratch, bones or clams or whatever you want to call them. A very short title, very short-lived title. Whole lot of cheddar. That's right. Folks, I got to go in a minute. I'm going to go pick up my kid from school. Theoretically, we could hit the goal. We could hit the sub goal in theory. In theory. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm not saying it has to happen. I'm just pointing out that it is within reach. And if there's one generous chatter watching, could get us to the goal. I'm just saying that it's possible. That's all I'm saying. I would gift, but I just got a new board game. That's fine, Zach. That's fine. And if no one can, that is totally okay. Believe me. Again, I'm not a hard ass. I'm not going to be a hard ass about this. I'm simply saying that it's a possibility, and that's all. Get him to the goal. I'm too broke, but I do have this emote with the knife. I mean, that's it. If you're watching this and if you want an emote of me threatening people with a knife,
You've just become an elite member
Plunger
of
Man.
the Friendship Triangle.
Plunger Man. Ugh. That's what I'm talking about, Plunger Man. Plunger Man, thank you so much. Then it was the knife, wasn't it? It was the knife that did it. Plunger Man, I really appreciate the 5 gifted subs. You got us to the goal. You're the real VIP, Plunger Man. Heck yeah. That's fucking wonderful. The levels of support that I get from this community, it never ceases to amaze me. It really doesn't. Thank you again, friends. Thank you, Maxie, and thank you for everyone for watching the show today. It was an enjoyable one as always. I will be back. Did my raid not work again? What the hell? the heck's going on, folks? You're the Canadian father we never had. Thank you, Johnny. I'm proud to be that. I was gonna raid left flank vets. I don't know what the fuck's going on. My raid commands just aren't working. Somehow Marty has surpassed my own powers on this channel. Got the phone bill treatment. Thanks, Dimitri. So tomorrow will be the last show of the week. Okay? It's just three episodes this week. But I hope to see everyone there tomorrow noon. Thanks again for hanging out today. It's giving me, it says Rob Rousseau is raiding left flank vets, and it's like it's like asking me to fucking join. I'm literally the host. What the fuck is going on here? I don't know. Anyway, Outrun is not the new Rob. No, that's not true. That's not accurate. I'll see you tomorrow. Goodbye.